And have to back to order.
We're better now.
Please be seated.
All right, let's go ahead and set forth our occurrences.
Your Honor, welcome for plans.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Teddy Parker, plaintiff.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Robert Eglett for plaintiff.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Maggie B. Federico for plaintiff. Good afternoon, Brianna Switzer for plaintiff, along with Francesca Bergeret. Right.
Fred Johnson, Tyler Watson, Michael Esposito, and Eric Freeman on behalf of the defendants. Your Honor, thank you.
All right. And we have one matter to address outside the presence.
Really briefly, just to help us further along, we've got a stipulated exhibit, if I can approach and if we can have it admitted.
Okay,
It's
ma'am.
exhibit 390. And there's a stipulation.
Oh, yes.
Moving for admission.
Shall be admitted, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor, also real brief. I talked to Mr. Watson, and I think we need to do something with the notes, if any, that the sleepy guy took.
What notes, Mr.
The
Kemp?
juror
I don't know if
didn't
there are
show up.
notes, but
It's
he
his-
does have a
Oh,
notebook.
okay.
It's his
I just
note,
want-
his book and his notepad. I
Yeah, we
doubt
just
he's got any notes in there.
Yeah, we just want the court to take it back under.
Well, no, gentlemen, you just say, Judge, can you have it taken back? And you agree? We don't need to go through any more explanations.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
So, Your Honor, I understand, our next witness is Dr. Singh, and I understand there's an objection, or there's going to be objection. I was told that by the defense, and so I guess it's their objection, so.
All right, let's get that notebook first, and then let's talk about that.
Would you like to talk more about the notebook first, Your Honor?
No, I just want to get things done so we don't forget, that's all.
Unless there's no.
Unless there's notes in there.
There's notes.
Are there any notes in that notebook?
Yeah, there's nothing in here.
Is that a blank page?
Those are blank too.
I'm gonna show this.
I think Mr. Johnson tore out all the good notes.
There it is.
No, just keep that, just keep it.
No, I appreciate.
I don't think anybody, we don't need to make a record of his notebook, do we? It doesn't have any.
No, Your Honor, we're fine.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, let's continue on with Dr. Singh.
Well, we would call Dr. Singh to the stand, Your Honor.
So, Your Honor, plans filed a trial brief. I asked several days ago for Dr. Singh, who is an expert in this case on causation. He enters one opinion. That opinion is, the only statistical supportable conclusion is that drinking real water is the trigger in the 3 cases that he analyzed. Now, Your Honor, causation's been established. We're already behind as a practical matter. The jury doesn't need to be confused, misled, prejudiced, whatever you want to have with regards to a bunch of statistical data about something that's already been determined by the court. Yeah, we've been talking about causation for days now, and there have been rulings limiting testimony. There's been motions to eliminate granted, excluding information or excluding testimony because causation has been decided. And the most problematic thing about this, Your Honor, is the true intent of the plaintiffs in this case comes through in the trial brief. And that's to once again attack Counselor Johnson and Counselor Johnson's opening argument. And we saw the display that happened yesterday. Mr. Eglett used a poor doctor to read his own declaration. And candidly, I think we've probably had enough of that in this trial. We've had enough of those antics overall. And I think we need to move the case along. So yes, Counselor Eglett is correct. I think we avoid the pageantry. We avoid the unnecessary testimony.
How do we avoid the pageantry?
Because we don't have to put a witness on, Your Honor, that's as a one-line opinion about causation, when causation's been established. We're not doing it. We don't need to attack Counselor Johnson in front of the jury again. We don't need to go back through opening arguments. And candidly, at the end of the day, the court is going to remind the jury that the court has already determined causation is a matter of law. There's no risk here that anything that's been said in this case so far contravenes that. Matter of fact, the defendants acknowledged that in their opening. So why are we putting on a witness to the jury about an issue that this court's already decided solely so Mr. Eglett can take another shot at Mr. Johnson? We would ask that the witness be excluded based upon, one, the representations in the trial brief, and two, this court's prior ruling.
All right, what about the assistance requirement?
The assistance requirement is not met, Your Honor, because this is not something the jury needs to decide. This is similar to the issue we raised in Hutt, right? Where the issue that's already been determined by the court under NRS 50, the assistance requirement is not met because the information is not relevant to a triable issue. The triable issues in this case are the amount of compensatory damages, whether or not punitive damages should be awarded, and if so, how much.
And I guess I'll kind of box it up in this regard. I'm looking at page 4, and this is at line 22, I guess. It says, quote, the rarity of autoimmune hepatitis is particularly relevant to understanding why plaintiffs' medical providers had difficulty diagnosing their condition. And that appears to me potentially to be the thrust of his opinion.
It's not, Your Honor. That's the problem. Is all he literally says that the odds of this being anything other than triggered by real water is, what's the figure here? 7.69 billion to 1. That's it. He's saying real water statistically was the cause of these illnesses. And by the way, Your Honor, the rarity of a disease has nothing to do with the impact that it has on the party that has it. I mean, we've seen.
We can potentially handle this if we can have some sort of stipulation, but go ahead.
What stipulation are you thinking, Your Honor?
Well, I'm thinking, because I'm looking here and I think it goes on page 5, and it addresses, I guess, some of the concerns plaintiffs have in this case, and it would be based upon statements that were made during opening statement. And I'm looking here, and I guess it starts at line 24, quote, quote, this is really a case about the plaintiffs are claiming that they're injured.
And then conveniently, Your Honor, they don't bold the next sentence that clarified that by saying the extent of their injuries. This is a statement about the amount
Okay,
of
but let
compensatory
me finish.
damage.
Let me, and I respect that, I do. But here's my point. If that was the case, then it should be, this is really a case about the extent of injuries suffered by the plaintiffs.
And Your Honor, we can nitpick the exact wording, but the fact remains that's water under the bridge at this point. There have been curative instructions issues relating to opening arguments. This, again, yesterday, we saw what Mr. Eglert's true intent is.
But see, my point is this, if we had a stipulation, we wouldn't need curative instructions at all, or anything. Because I guess, and I'll let, of course, the other side say what they have to say, what Mr. Egler has to say. But I do understand the thrust of why it's being requested, that's all.
So, Your Honor, are we going to parade every witness up here to once again attack what Mr. Johnson said at opening? Is that how this trial is going to go?
Well,
Because I'm happy to stipulate to reminding the jury that causation's been established and foregoing this witness entirely.
Maybe I could have to respond to some of this that's being repeated for the 10th time now.
I
Your Honor,
understand.
if that's okay?
But I want to make sure you're done.
If Your Honor has any questions, otherwise,
Okay. I'm fine for now.
Your Honor, I certainly don't intend on having this witness read my affidavit or read the motion. I've already made my point with this jury about the timing of when they were notified of the change in the life care plan. So that's not what this is about here. Dr. Dr. Singh's expert testimony remains essential to this case. First, Dr. Singh will assist the jury in understanding damages, and Hallmark establishes that expert testimony is admissible when it will assist the trier of fact to understand the evidence, and that standard is met here. Dr. Singh's testimony carries substantial probative value in helping the jury understand the full scope of plaintiff's damages while presenting no unfair prejudice to the defendants. His analysis explaining that the astronomical odds of Lisa King, Andrea Bourdonnais, and Leila Kaba getting autoimmune hepatitis from anything other than real water, yes, is 7.69 billion to 1, and it speaks directly to the nature of plaintiff's injuries. This extreme rarity of autoimmune hepatitis explains why Lisa King's doctors struggled for years to diagnose her autoimmune condition. And Lisa experienced symptoms beginning in March 2018, but wasn't properly diagnosed until October 2020 after undergoing a liver biopsy. And the jury must understand why these diagnoses were so difficult to obtain, because this prolonged diagnosis directly contributed to Ms. King's and Ms. Bourdonnais' suffering here. Without Dr. Singh's testimony, jurors will lack critical information needed to assess damages, including why Lisa King endured years of misdiagnosis, delayed treatment, and mental anguish. And while Andrea Bourdonnais' delay in the diagnosis was not as long as Ms. King's, there was nevertheless a delay that prolonged her suffering. And so second, Your Honor, we cannot ignore defense counsel's improper statements. And this is not something that's going to come up in the my direct of Dr. Singh, but it's important for me to put in this motion so the court understands. I think the court gets this, that we cannot ignore defense counsel's improper statements during the introduction to the jury panel outlined in our brief, the voir dire, and his opening statements. And now it's so rich that counsel is making this argument about this when just the last witness, he cross-examines her and uses makes a statement that has clearly been excluded by plaintiff's motion in limine number 36, where he talks about, the fact that, that they were not supposed to present any evidence or argument that, about this delay in the diagnosis by her treating physicians, as if that somehow, and there's no reason for him to do that other than, just like these examples from Mr. Johnson, is to sow doubt in this jury's mind about causation. And we have a juror, Mr. Dixon, who keeps sending questions in that clearly touch on the issue of causation. So that right there is proof that that question is still with the jury. And defense counsel used multiple hypotheticals to imply that plaintiff's injuries may not exist at all. For instance, defense counsel on his own brought up the damages of PTSD to the jury and expressed to the jury doubts about the existence of that. And one more example, Your Honor, Mr. Johnson said to the jury, but you guys have to figure out what the damages are to the extent those damages exist. The court has already determined that those damages exist. The issue for the jury is how amount of money will it take to balance those harms and losses. And Dr. Singh's testimony is necessary to cure any confusion caused by defense counsel's comments and attempts at jury nullification. So Dr. Singh's testimony remains highly relevant to the jury's determination of damages, as I pointed out, and is the thrust of our argument. But it is also necessary to counteract the defense counsel's improper statements and their continual attempts, even this morning, to sow doubt about causation in this jury's mind. Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm going to respond, Your Honor.
Well, wait a minute, Judge. I mean, this is one motion, one lawyer, Your Honor.
Mr. Johnson, anything you need to address outside of what more than competent counsel can do?
Sure, Your Honor.
I'm trying to, this is my point, and when you break it down, what's the problem with the doctor opining on the rarity of the illnesses suffered by the two plaintiffs?
Well, here's the issue that wasn't addressed is Dr. Singh isn't going to testify as to why it took so long to get diagnosed. Nothing in his report relates to that. So
But you notice I didn't say that. I said the rarity.
Just turn into a
I thought that's what Mr. Eglis said.
But I'm saying, but it seems to me the thrust is how rare it is and the
Right.
rarity of this type of affliction or ailment ultimately resulted in the
Well,
delay.
they plaintiff stated in their opening how difficult it was for the doctors to figure out, no one could figure out what happened. So this the classic trying to flash it back onto us, they brought that up. That's been waived a long time ago. They talked about that consistently in their opening and throughout.
But I mean, well, here's my point. Even if I hypothetically brush aside their comments regarding what you set forth on the record in the opening statement, why can't the expert come in and talk about the rarity and those types of things as it relates to this type of event?
Well, because we've already stipulated on, to answer your question directly, Your Honor, do you understand that Dr. Singh here is only talking about 3 of the plaintiffs? You don't think that's confusing to the jury? What about the other 9?
Wait, but every
Does this deal
plaintiff.
with only
Wait,
autoimmune hepatitis?
no, but every plaintiff has a right to have, they're not gonna have cookie cutter experts. They're not, they're not, depending on what the affliction is, they'll have different experts. But coming back to, I'm trying to figure out what the problem is. And I would anticipate this testimony is not gonna take very long.
No, Your Honor.
You're probably right, Your Honor. By the time that he could have got up there and testified and sat back down, it'd probably be shorter than what we're doing here. We're just making a record that we
But I wanna
believe.
make sure I understand, but I want to understand what's wrong with it. That's all I'm asking for.
Your Honor, we've indicated what we believe is wrong with it. I don't want to repeat myself.
Okay.
And if the court disagrees, I respect your decision.
No, I understand that. But I just want to make sure the record was clear, because it's not 100% clear as far as I'm concerned. Because for the limited purpose it's being offered for, I'm trying to understand what's the problem? Foundation? Is it relevancy? Is it prejudicial? That's what I'm trying to find out. Just
Well,
kind
Your
of
Honor,
clear.
not only is it irrelevant, it's redundant. It is a waste of the court's time.
Well, I guess not redundancy. There's no such thing. It could be cumulative, but I don't think anybody else is testifying.
It's not
to this.
redundant. He's talking about opening statement. That's not evidence. This is the evidence. His testimony.
The court's order says that there is causation. So whether it's cumulative or redundant, that's the law in the case.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Get the last word, sir.
I don't need to say anything else, Your Honor. This is the evidence. Opening statement's not evidence. And it's, quite frankly,
Well, actually, Mr. Egley, I'll take it further. If you make a promise to the jury in opening statement, you hope to fulfill that.
Right.
Based upon the evidence that comes out at the time of trial. I get that.
yeah.
This is a unique issue. There's no question about it. We had 3 of the plaintiffs. Was it 3?
Two of the plaintiffs
Two of the plaintiffs in this
and the third
case.
plaintiff in
The
another
third
case.
is a plaintiff in another case,
All
Your
right.
Honor.
And in case there's any concern by the fact finders as to the rarity and why it wasn't discovered earlier, statistically, it comes back to differential diagnosis and all those types of things that a physician would go through. I don't see it as a significant issue in this case as far as being prejudicial on any level. And you're right, we probably could have been done by now.
3 times.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that.
I'll permit it for the purposes being offered for.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah. Sir, are we ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, my brother graduated from Purdue in '79. Kevin.
Which one, Your Honor?
Kevin graduated from Purdue. Both Carl and I are IU grads.
That's right.
Is Carl still practicing?
Every day,
Yeah. Good for him.
every day. And interestingly, he practices, I mean, he does 10, 15 surgeries a week.
That's hard work.
Hard.
All rise for the jury.
All right, do the parties stipulate to the presence of the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed your lunch. And we're ready to call our next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. We would call Dr. Singh to the stand. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a good lunch.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
May I have you state and spell your name for the record?
First name is Ashok, A-S-H-O-K. Middle initial is K. Last name is Singh, S-I-N-G-H.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dr. Singh. Dr. Singh, where do you currently reside?
In Henderson, Nevada.
Okay. What is your profession?
I am a professor of statistics in the College of Hospitality. I used to be a professor in math department, then I switched the college.
And the College of Hospitality, is that the Hera College of Hospitality at the
Exactly.
University of Nevada?
That is correct.
Okay. And so you are not a medical doctor, correct?
No,
Okay. And you have a PhD in statistics, is that correct?
yes, sir.
Okay. How long have you been a professor for the university?
For this university?
Yes.
Since 1991.
Okay. And can you please describe your educational background for us?
So I have a bachelor's degree in physics, mathematics, and statistics, and then a master's degree in mathematical statistics from Lucknow University, India. Those two degrees are in India. I have a PhD from Purdue University, West Lafayette, Indiana.
Was that Purdue University?
Purdue,
Okay.
right.
And as an applied, and your education is an applied statistics, correct?
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
As an applied statistician, why is it important to have a PhD?
Okay, I really believe that no university, no book can teach you everything that you will ever need. Things are always changing. So with a PhD, you learn how to learn things and then how to apply that to solving problems.
Okay. What do applied statisticians do?
Applied statisticians sometimes will work on, like new methods because there is no method that exists to solve your problem, and I have done that. But mostly I'm analyzing data to, answer questions that people might have.
Okay. Can you please describe your professional experience as an applied statistician?
So the main experience that I have as an applied statistician was with the EPA, US EPA. We had a Las Vegas office. So I worked with them, actually started that work in 1990, and that continued to 3-4 years ago. Now the EPA office is gone, so that work is gone.
Let me try to go through this chronologically so that
Okay,
the jury
okay.
will get a better idea. From 1977 to 1978, were you a visiting research scientist at the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences?
Yes, sir, that's
Okay.
correct.
And from 1978 to 1983, were you assistant professor at mathematics at New Mexico Tech
That is
University?
correct.
Okay. Doctor, can you wait until I finish my question before you give your answer? Because it's being recorded and sometimes it's hard to pick up both of us talking at the same time, and that's the record for this case, okay? Thank you. And then from June 1986 to December 1986, were you a visiting professor at the Department of Statistics in Lucknow University, Indiana?
In India.
India, excuse me. You're right.
That is
India.
correct.
Yeah. And at the same time, while you were a visiting professor for those 6 months, were you still an associate professor in mathematics at New Mexico Tech University?
Yes, I had taken a sabbatical of 6 months.
All right. And then from June 1990 through December 1990, were you a senior statistician with the Environmental Research Center at the University of Nevada?
That is correct.
Okay. And from 1991 to 1993, were you an associate professor of mathematics and senior statistician for the Harry Reid Center for Environmental Studies at the university?
Yes, that is correct.
And from 1993 to 2005, were you a professor in the Department of Mathematical Sciences at the university?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then from 2006 to the current, to now, the present, are you a professor in the Department of the Hera College of Hospitality, UNLV, at UNLV?
Yes, sir.
And what is the RGG stand for?
RGG stands for Resorts, Gaming, and Golf Management.
Okay. Was there okay, so there was an overlap, was there an overlap in this list between your time as a professor at New Mexico Tech and a senior statistician at the University of Nevada?
That is correct. I wanted to try out this job at UNLV first to see how the city is for family. So I stayed and worked for 6 months, then I went back, and then I applied in the math department when the position opened.
And did you tell me when we met that your family and friends didn't want you to move here because they thought there was just casinos and no houses here?
Yes, so my job in that 6 months was to actually scope it out and see if kids can go to school and,
All right. Now, do you do any consulting work in the field of applied statistics?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And have you worked for the Environmental Protection Agency from June 1990 to July 2018, providing statistical and geostatistical support to projects for the US EPA?
That is correct.
Okay. In 2000, did you design statistical experiments and data analysis with the Clark County Sanitation District?
What was that year again? I'm sorry.
The date?
No, the year?
In 2000.
Yes,
Year
that is
2000.
correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
In 2002, did you perform statistical analysis for the Southern Nevada Water Authority?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you have any specific research interests?
I don't understand that.
Well,
question,
you
sir.
had told me the other day when we met that, or the other night when we met, that your research interest includes statistical and machine learning
Yes, yes.
and applications in hospitality and gaming, medical research, public health, and civil environmental.
Yes, that is
engineering.
correct. I'm sorry I didn't follow that.
That's
question.
okay. That's okay. Is machine learning, is that AI? Is that what that is?
It leads into AI.
Okay. We won't get into that because that's a complicated area that I'm sure most of us here don't understand. But have you published any books or papers about applied statistics?
Yes, sir. There is one book on applied math, actually, on Laplace transforms. Another book on casino games. math of casino games.
And that was applied statistics
Yeah,
to
yeah.
casino games?
Yeah, and then I have a contract for another book, which should come out in 3-4 months.
Is that in applied statistics?
Applied statistics.
Okay. And have you written a number of academic articles in this area?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm also, are you the editor for the Journal of the Applied Statistics and Machine Learning, which is a journal in India?
That is correct.
Okay. And are you were the reviewer for the journals Machine Learning with Application at Cornell Quarterly and Cornell University, and the University of Nevada Gaming Research and Review Journal, among others?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Is your published works peer reviewed?
Yes, sir.
What does it mean for a publication to be peer reviewed, and why is peer review important?
The peer review is important because I can do some work and find out, and, we are all human beings, make mistakes. So if somebody peer reviews it, and they will ask me to correct if they find an error or something. So it is important for a publication to be peer reviewed.
Have you given presentations in the field of applied statistics?
Yes, sir. Several.
Dr. Singh, before this case, have you ever served as an expert witness in applied statistics?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you remember what your assignments in those cases were?
Mostly I was either, in one case I had to go collect the data myself. Another case is they will send me the data files and I will analyze the data and answer the questions.
Let me see if I can go chronologically, or maybe reverse chronologically to pick up who you were doing these assignments for. In 2018, did you do an assignment for the Southern Nevada Water Authority to explain the method used for identifying investigation triggers using the seasonally adjusted linear regression method?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And in 2018, did you also serve as an expert witness at an arbitration between the Mescalero Apache tribe and the state of New Mexico to determine whether free play revenue is taxable?
Yes, that is
That
correct.
had to do with casino revenue, right?
Right.
Okay. And in August 2004, were you hired to compare the 3 periods of sales at a business in terms of profits to determine whether installation and replacement of a liquid dispensing system affected the profits at a bar?
Yes, I remember that case very
Okay.
well.
And in 2002, did you design a statistical experiment to determine whether cement trucks were being consistently overloaded, or if they were inferior quality?
That is correct.
Okay. And in February 2002, did you perform a statistical data analysis of airline safety data?
Yes, that is correct.
And in 1980, did you perform a statistical data analysis on data provided by Angel Fire Corporation, which was sued by local farmers for adversely affecting the water table with artificial snow it made for its ski resort?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, none of these, so none of your expert witness work has occurred in the past 4 years, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Did you testify in court in any of these cases?
In couple of these cases I did.
Okay. And as an expert in applied statistics, have you testified on behalf of plaintiffs and defendants?
Yes.
Okay. Are you being paid for your time today, doctor?
Yes, sir.
And how much are you being paid for your time?
I'm getting 500 an hour.
And is that rate considered standard in the industry with somebody with your experience?
Yes, it is.
Okay. What was your assignment in this case?
In this case, I was given some data and I was asked to estimate or calculate the probability of 3 females coming down with AIH, autoimmune hepatitis, which is what I have done.
And was your assignment to conduct an analysis of the probability of these 3 different females in Clark County getting
Exactly.
autoimmune hepatitis in the absence of a drug-induced cause while consuming the same bottled water product purchased in the same 3 months period in 2018 with a known contaminant that can trigger autoimmune disease such as autoimmune hepatitis.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who were the 3 females involved?
Lisa and
Lisa King,
Lisa King, and then
Andrea Bourdonnais,
Andrea Botany, and then the last one is the name.
Lala Kava.
You'll have to excuse me, I'm a mathematician, so I'm allowed to forget.
Is it your understanding that 2 of those women are plaintiffs in this case?
Yes.
Ms. King and Ms. Bourdonnais? Okay. What materials did you review in making your calculations?
So I was given Dr. Hudson's
Dr. Hudson's expert report,
yes,
who's a
yes,
hepatologist
his
in this
report,
case.
and then
You given his deposition to Dr. Hudson's?
I believe so. Yes,
Okay.
yes. I looked at the deposition, and the data I had to find.
Were you given the Southern Nevada Health
Yes, I'm
Health
sorry.
Department record for Lisa King?
Yes.
Were you
Yes.
given Lisa King's medical records?
Yes. Yes.
Were you given Andrea Bourdonnais' medical records?
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Well, it's on my list here. You told me about it. Does that refresh your memory?
Yes.
And you-
I just didn't remember.
Right. You didn't bring your file with you, huh?
Yeah.
Where's your file?
Oh, I
Because
just,
this isn't a memorization test. You can have your file in front of you to help refresh your memory.
forgot to bring it here. I left it.
You left it in the room out there? Can you get that for us?
I'm sorry.
It might make this a little, it's okay, doctor. I was sitting here, I was wondering, why does he have his file in front of him?
I just, there is a report that, if you can just give me everything, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
May I approach your honor?
You can.
Is this your file, doctor?
Thank you.
Is that
Yes.
your file?
Yes.
All right. You see in there where it identifies that you were provided Lisa King, Andrea Bourdonnais, and Layla Cava's medical records, doctor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, are those sources of information the type of information regularly and reasonably relied upon by applied statisticians when making these types of calculations?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How did you go about, and remember, none of us here are statisticians, okay? So can you explain to us in the simplest terms how you went about calculating the probability of this event?
Okay, so I use this method called Bayesian method, where the probability that I'm trying to estimate is a random variable itself. And I have looked at the literature, and they claim that the prevalence of AIH varies a lot. So that's the reason for choosing this method. So in this method allows me to use some preliminary information that I may have or a statistician may have about the system, about the problem, and then also combine that with the data using this theorem called Bayes' theorem. And then after we combine that process is called Bayesian updating. So you have some expert belief from before. When you look at the data and you update the belief, and then you calculate the probability distribution of the parameter you are looking at, and then you can get a confidence interval for that.
Right.
You can narrow it down.
Let me see if I can simplify this a little bit. So I think what you said is you determined the number of people in Clark County who have autoimmune hepatitis.
That is correct.
So autoimmune hepatitis people in Clark County, and you came up with this number, whatever that was, right?
Are you talking about the actual cases?
Right.
Yeah, I remember the number.
And then, did you divide that by the total number of people in Clark County?
Total number of females?
Females, okay? So it's gender specific.
Yes, sir.
What was the next step you did in your analysis?
Okay, so after that, so when you have a situation where you're given like number of cases versus total number of cases, the distribution we use, probability distribution we use is called binomial distribution. That probability
That didn't work out.
I don't want to call it success, but in statistics, that's what we call it success. Finding an AI case is not really a success. So I started with that model, and then I picked probability distribution, prior probability distribution of that, and then I combined the two to come up with the probability of this proportion of AIH cases based on the data. And then I could plot the probability distribution. Then I calculated from that 95% confidence interval.
Okay, and we'll get to the 95% confidence interval. I actually remember that from my statistics class in college, but 100 years ago. But anyway, so are the calculations you made of the type typically made and relied upon by applied statisticians in the practice of your profession?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what is your calculation of the probability of 3 different females in Clark County getting autoimmune hepatitis in the first quarter of 2018, but just by natural randomness?
So you are asking about the actual estimate, right?
Yeah, you talked to me about the natural randomness, the rate of 1.2. Yeah. Tell the jury about that.
Yeah, so that probability, there are 2 things you have to remember. One is my best guess. So the best guess from the data is 0.90, so that's a billion already, then 0.125. That's just the one estimate.
So is it 1.2 to 1.3 per 10
billion.
billion?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So that's the statistical probability of 3 different females in Clark County getting autoimmune hepatitis in the first quarter of 2008 just by natural random.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, can you step down for us? Can I have the step down?
You can step down, sir.
Can I use?
Step down safely.
Yeah,
though.
bring your marker with you.
Watch your steps, sir.
Don't trip on all these cords going on here.
Not that billion.
Okay, so now if you could just below this line here, can you write out your calculation for us?
Is it okay if I write down?
Write out your calculation, yes.
Write down the formula?
Yes, write down the formula we're talking about.
Okay, so as I said, there are 2 things. One is the prior information, or just write info, and then sample information.
So prior information and sample information,
Yes. So the
okay?
prior information is a belief about the parameter, like the probability. So here, now I'll use this function. I mean, that's the standard notation in statistics, is the probability of P I'm just going to write down this formula. Now remember that P has to be between 0 and 1. So I have to choose a distribution that it covers only 0 to 1. So that formula is gamma of alpha plus beta. Alpha and beta are two parameters that I will choose, divided by gamma alpha times gamma beta. And then E is the probability, this probability of alpha minus 1. And 1 minus t to the power beta minus 1. Here, alpha and beta are constants that statistician will choose. And P is the probability that I'm trying to estimate. Then the sample information, we had, like I said, I mean, statisticians call it success. It's not really a success, it's a bad situation. So
Maybe when you're talking, you could turn toward us a little bit, okay? Because it's hard to hear. It's okay.
Yeah, because the board is not, not inflexible like in the classroom.
Yes.
That's why I'm trying to hold it as well.
Why don't I come up there and hold it for you, doctor?
It's okay, I know.
You sure?
Yeah.
Because I would rather you be able to talk to the jury and push back, so I'll hold it for
Sorry. Thank you. And then I don't remember the total number of population, but it's pretty high. This is the population of females. The number of females in Clark County. Like I'm writing on a moving target. So this is a large number. I just don't remember this one. And so the probability distribution I use here, I simplify it so it doesn't look very complicated. So it's f of x given this p. I'm just going to write it like a constant, then p to the power x, 1 minus p to the power, and uppercase 1 minus x.
Okay, so that's the formula you used, is that right?
And then I combine.
And I'm sure we all here understand that, right?
I hope.
So let's see if we could just cut to the chase. Are you saying that the probability of 3 women getting autoimmune hepatitis in Clark County, is this anywhere, or is this just in Clark County, this per billion?
This is Clark, this is Clark County.
Clark County, 1.1 to 1.3 per 10 billion.
Yeah, and we don't have that population.
Is that an indication that autoimmune hepatitis is extremely rare?
Yes, sir, very, very rare.
Okay. It's not a common ailment that,
No,
that
no.
people have. Okay.
It's not, and thank God for that.
You can sit back now, okay? And we'll let the jury absorb your formula. So, doctor, could you bring up figure 2 from Dr. Singh's report, please? You see that monitor in front of me? Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see
okay. Now, did you calculate a confidence interval for your?
Exhibit this is?
I'm sorry, what?
What exhibit?
This is 1205.
For the record.
1205, Your Honor. Pull this down so you can see it. Sorry about that. Okay. Did you calculate a confidence interval for your estimation of the probability of 3 different females getting autoimmune hepatitis in Clark County 2018?
Yes, sir.
And what confidence interval did you use?
The most common confidence level is 95%. Like all the years I worked with EPA, most of the times they would use 95%. It's very common confidence that people use. So I use 95% confidence.
And is the graph in the exhibit on the screen there, is that graph an accurate illustration of the 95 confidence interval for this event.
Yes, sir.
And can you please explain to us what a confidence interval is and why it's important to calculate one?
Yes, sir. So, if I can just start from here. So,
If you want to come out and
Is that
point
okay?
at the diagram, Judge, that's okay, right? Yeah.
Sir, if you want to step down, but watch your step,
thank you.
you can do so.
Thank- I stand here, sir. So this middle point, remember I was saying like the point value for the probability of catching three females catching area is like 0.90 then 125, that's the one value. But one value alone reporting does not have any accuracy. If I just told you probability is 0.0009 times and then 0.25, you don't know how accurate that estimate is. Right? So here with the confidence interval, I'm 95% certain. Looking at this graph, this is the 95. So from here to here, we are 95% certain that the actual probability will fall inside this interval. From L, which is 90117, to U, upper value, which is 90133. So that tiny an interval.
Okay. So it's, the confidence interval essentially means your ultimate calculation is 95%, probability is 95% that it's accurate.
Exactly.
Okay. Is it your understanding that the burden of proof in civil cases such as this one is a preponderance of the evidence?
That is my understanding.
Okay. And is it your understanding that that means the plaintiffs must prove their claims are more likely true than not true?
Your Honor, approach.
As far as the objection, I'll overrule.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay. So we were talking about what your understanding of the burden of proof. You understand that the burden of proof in civil cases is just more likely than not. The plaintiffs just have to tip the scales slightly, right?
That is my understanding.
And you've testified
Yes, before.
under those standards in court before, right? Is it your understanding, in other words, okay, is it possible to calculate, let's say, a 51% confidence interval?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Would a 51 confidence interval correspond to a 51% certainty that the confidence interval captures the true value of the probability of three female getting autoimmune hepatitis in Clark County?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the 95% confidence interval you calculated in this case provides a much higher level of certainty that is required by the burden of proof in this case. Is that right?
Yes, that's definitely correct.
And what is the 95% confidence interval we calculated for this event?
The actual confidence interval
Yes.
is from 0.90 and 117, or let's say 0.9012 to 0.90, leading 0 is 0.13. So
Is it a narrow confidence level?
this is the narrowest I have seen.
Narrowest you've seen.
It's really narrow.
If you were doing just a 51% confidence interval, would it be even narrower?
Yes, sir, it would be.
Like something like this?
Yeah, it will be a thin slice on
Thin
that.
slice.
Yeah.
Okay. And does a narrow confidence interval mean your calculation is very precise?
Yeah, the width of the confidence interval goes towards the accuracy of your estimate.
And so with this confidence interval, what does it mean with respect to the question you were asked to answer here? With respect to the three females in Clark County getting autoimmune hepatitis in the first quarter of 2018, or who drank real water in the first quarter of 2018.
Basically means that, from 1.2 out of 10 billion people catching this disease to 1.3 out of 10 billion people catching this disease. Those are the probabilities, very, very low.
In other words, does
probability.
it mean it is extremely unlikely? It is extremely unlikely that there will be 3 autoimmune hepatitis female cases in Clark County, Nevada, just by natural randomness.
Yes, yes, sir.
And based on the confidence interval, what are the odds of 3 females getting autoimmune hepatitis in Clark County in 2018 in the absence of a common trigger?
I mean, if I can give you, like an approximate value, it will be 1.25 out of.
No. I'm talking about based on the confidence interval, what is the odds of 3 females getting autoimmune hepatitis in Clark County in 2018 in the absence of a common trigger? The billion to 1 number you had given us.
Oh, yeah, that would be like 1.25 billion, 1.25 to 10 billion.
Didn't you tell us didn't you say in your report that it was 7.69 billion to 1?
Oh, you're talking about, I'm sorry.
Am I talking about the wrong thing?
No, I misunderstood your question. I
Okay,
should
let
have just asked
me
you.
phrase it again. Based on this confidence interval of 95%, what are the odds of 3 females getting autoimmune hepatitis in Clark County in 2018 in the absence of a common trigger?
Can I just look at my report real
Absolutely,
quick? And
please.
that would be, then I can give you the exact number. Odds are calculated as probability, then divide that by 1 minus probability, and then you can express that. So I know that I have
Why don't
that.
you just give us the number, Doc?
Yeah, just 1 second. Yeah. So that number is about 7.69 billion to 1. 7.69.
My pen,
You can borrow mine.
thank you. 7.69
9 billion to 1.
billion to 1.
Yes.
Okay. And doctor, what is the 95% confidence interval you calculated for this? Oh, excuse me, I asked you that question. And is the triggering event the consumption of real water?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I understand, and hopefully the jury understands, what you're saying is that the odds of 3 women in Clark County contracting autoimmune hepatitis C, absence their consumption of real water, would be 7.69 billion to 1.
Yes.
And in 2018, where there are approximately 7.6 billion people on Earth.
Yes.
Okay. Doctor, have all of your opinions you have expressed today been based on data information regularly relied upon in your profession of applied statistics?
That is correct, sir.
Have all of your conclusions been based on statistical reason?
That is correct.
Have you testified today in any way out of the ordinary given your professional standards?
No.
Have all of the opinions you've expressed today been made to a reasonable degree of mathematical and statistical probability?
Yes, sir.
And are your conclusions in this case more likely true than not true?
That is correct.
And beyond that, are you certain?
Yes, sir, I'm very certain.
Thank you, Dr. Singh.
Okay.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Dr. Singh, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Well, I'm obviously not as good at math as you are, so I'm going to try and simplify this just a little bit, okay? All of this that you wrote down, as far as I can understand, is to tell the jury that the odds are pretty good that real water caused the injuries in this case, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
So you're not opining on the medical condition of any of the plaintiffs?
No, I don't have that expertise. I'm just a statistician. I'm only looking at the data.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, opposing counsel mentioned the fact that you were provided medical records. Did you rely on any medical data?
I did get some data from it,
Okay.
but
But you're not actually rendering a medical opinion?
no.
Okay, just making sure, because are you aware that causation
Your Honor.
has already been established in this case?
This is argumentative, he's not asking questions at this point.
I am asking questions. We're getting right to the crux of the opinion.
Just ask him the question.
Sure. Are you opining to anything other than the issue of causation in this case?
No.
Okay, nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. I thought you were looking to see if there's jury. No jury questions?
Come on, come on.
That's a tough one. Use the For the record, who was 1205, exhibit 1205?
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Has that been offered?
I'll offer, I'm sorry, I thought it was under, I'll offer it as plaintiff's exhibit 1205 at this time, Your Honor.
It's the expert report here. I'm going to care if
It's a chart from the expert report, it's not the entire report,
just that page?
just that page.
No objection.
Okay. And make sure we get a copy.
Yes.
So they-
No, I know the board.
That board is that wrap.
No, we don't need that board.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, counsel, it's 1205 is what we're numbering it?
Yeah, I believe, and I'm not sure if I have a page number for it, if that is the page number.
That would be a write-in.
We'll track that down and give you the page number for it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah,
And make sure you get one given to the clerk.
we will. We will.
Thank you, counsel.
All right. Next witness, Mr. Trump.
Your Honor, plaintiff's next witness is Dr. Stephen Sands.
Okay.
I know you're fighting for it, right?
You do solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
May I have you state and spell your name for the record?
Stephen Sands, StephenSands.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dr. Sands. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Sands, can you please tell the jury what you do for a living? Yes, I am a neuropsychologist. I provide evaluations for children, adolescents, young adults, and adults to see how their brain is functioning. And can you tell the jury a little bit about your educational background? I earned my doctorate in child psychology and school psychology from NYU, School of Medicine. And then went on to complete my fellowship at Memorial Sloan Kettering, which is a very prominent cancer hospital. And those are the two major parts of my education. I got my undergraduate degree at University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Very proud of that, in psychology major.
Okay. And what did you do after you obtained your doctoral degree?
I was recruited to run the psychosocial program for pediatric cancer at NYU Hospital, where I was for 6 years providing counseling to children and their parents of cancer patients going through treatment, as well as performing neuropsychological assessments concurrent with their disease and treatment.
And did you engage in a fellowship?
Yes, that was prior to going to NYU. After I got my doctorate at NYU, yes, I did my fellowship at Memorial Sloan Kettering, where I assessed patients throughout the entire hospital, children, adolescents, young adults, and adults, and found it incredibly rewarding.
And can you just briefly explain to the jury what a fellowship is?
Yes. Once you get your doctorate, it's advanced training for 1 to 2 years of focusing full-time in a particular specialty, where you then come out through extensive supervision, training, and experience. You become an expert in that profession at the beginning of your career, but you complete your fellowship.
And where do you work currently?
Just to fill in those two gaps, from Memorial Sloan Kettering, and then I just mentioned going to NYU for 6 years. I will come back to where I go. But I then was recruited to Columbia University Medical Center, where for 15 years I did the same thing. I ran the psychosocial program for the pediatric cancer program, providing counseling and therapy for patients and parents of kids going through treatment, and also performing neuropsychological evaluations. And then to answer your question, I was then recruited to go back to Memorial Sloan Kettering 7 years ago. They did not have a pediatric neuropsychology program, as crazy as that sounds. So I wanted to get out of my comfort zone and build something. So I built a brand new research and clinical pediatric neuropsychology program from when there was none. And they're both flourishing and doing really well.
Okay. Do you also teach?
Yes. Teachers College is part of Columbia University, and I'm an adjunct professor and teach once a year neuropsychology for pediatric and adult to master's level students there. And then in terms of academic appointments, through Memorial Sloan Kettering, I'm a full professor and at Cornell Weill School of Medicine, in addition to being the director of pediatric neuropsychology.
Do you also have a private practice?
Yes.
And what does that entail?
Forensic work, similar to this situation, where perform evaluations, independent medical evaluations, to determine the impact of potential damage to the brain, whether it was a traumatic brain injury from car accident, a stroke, a seizure, lead poisoning from eating paint, a wide range of potential problems that are part of litigation. And I'm hired by a law firm to perform an independent medical evaluation, IME.
And are you retained by both plaintiffs and defendants in different cases?
Yes, exactly.
What approximately is the apportionment between the two?
Roughly 50-50, a good mix. It had been a bunch of defense work, but lately been recognizing the importance of working with plaintiffs and as well. So I'd say 50-50.
What role does a neuropsychologist play in treating patients with a medical disease such as cancer or acute liver failure?
Once there is damage to the brain, either documented, someone has a brain tumor, or other cancers, or suspected. In this case, for cancer, for example, we're fortunately able to cure most, but not all, children going through cancer. And sometimes the treatment is curative, but it can damage their brain. The best example would be someone who has a brain tumor, they have surgery, they take it out, and they get radiation to their brain, so they're cured. Or someone has leukemia and gets chemotherapy, it passes the blood-brain barrier on purpose and impacts the brain, or in this case, which we'll talk about, is ingesting toxins, neurotoxins, hydrazine in the real water, passes the blood-brain barrier and impacts the brain. So my job is to examine the impact of brain damage from the impact of brain dysfunction, brain damage from an accident or an illness.
What about psychological trauma? Is there trauma associated with suffering a life-threatening or significant medical condition?
Of course, and spare you a lot of details, but when, for example, talking about cancer and then pivoting to real water, for cancer, I really enjoy working with families who, upon diagnosis, they're deer in the headlights, their life gets turned on a dime. And so yes, 100%, trying to get them to problem solve, kind of be able to communicate with their family, with the doctors, develop a plan, but also throughout treatment, not just day one. And then beyond, and we'll talk about beyond, because it's not just, okay, you're cured of cancer, you're healthy, you're fine. No, once you've had damage to your brain, you're at risk for future problems and falling behind your peers because of the damage. With real water, absolutely. I spoke to, and we'll talk about it, all 12 plaintiffs that I evaluated. I made time at the end to talk about their real water experience, and it's as if it happened yesterday. And it comes out of nowhere, and we'll circle back, but it's so overwhelming for them. They have no idea what's going on. They have no idea why they're throwing up, can hardly stay awake, unresponsive, diarrhea, I mentioned throwing up, I apologize, cognitive problems of word finding difficulty, attention, memory, and going to the hospital multiple times, poked, prodded, no diagnoses, going back and forth and back and forth, going home, oh yeah, food poisoning, keep drinking more real water, rest up. And so we'll talk more about it in a minute, but I'm just trying to give you a flavor of, yes, it's as if it happened yesterday, it's palpable, and every one of them separately brings that trauma and experience in a conversation to me.
Dr. Sands, and you may have already touched on this, but can you explain to the jury what is the concept of survivorship?
I was mentioning before that once you're done with your medical treatment, that's fantastic, and that's great, but that's not the time to disengage and not get further treatment and follow-up. Certain diagnoses, certain treatments put you at risk for whether it's cognitive problems, you're going to have memory problems, you're going to have attention problems, you're going to have executive functioning problems, you have anxiety, you have depression. That doesn't go away just because the treatment's stopped. So it's really, survivorship is about continued follow-up post-treatment to make sure that whatever you're at risk for, that they're on top of it and can assess for it. And then if you need help, get it for you early before you fall further and further behind and it gets even harder to catch up.
Let's transition to your work in this case. What were you asked to do?
I was asked to evaluate 12 plaintiffs.
You were asked to evaluate all the plaintiffs except Kathleen Gassias.
Yes.
Do you know the reason why you were not able to evaluate Ms. Gassias?
Yes, it was explained to me that Catherine was about to have a baby and did have a baby and wasn't able to come in or be tested for obvious reasons. So, yeah, sorry, go.
What work did you conduct to reach your opinions in this case?
I reviewed all the medical literature as it relates to hydrazine, as it relates to common problems like liver fibrosis, like hepatic encephalopathy, also reviewing their medical records that were provided to me, and then meeting with everyone separately. I met 7 in person, and then other 5 of them couldn't come in, so I did assess them remotely, separately. Clinical interviews, and background history of education, occupation, what their concerns are, and then administered standardized tests of neuropsychological functioning to try to really get a clear sense of how they are doing compared to their same age peers.
Okay, let's walk through each of these one by one. you stated you reviewed all the medical records for each plaintiff, correct?
Yes.
And did you also review Dr. Hudson's reports about the plaintiffs in this case?
Yes.
What were your takeaways from the medical records?
That these 12 plaintiffs that I evaluated all had strikingly similar experiences. I was touching on it before, how it comes out of nowhere and the symptoms that they had of cognitive problems, neuropsychiatric problems. And this is all secondary because they ingested a neurotoxin, hydrazine, which we'll talk about, that causes liver damage in mice, rats, humans, and monkeys. And also literature shows that it causes cancer in rats and mice. So having gone through all similar experiences, sorry, I'm just trying to stay on point for you. They all went through similar experiences. They were traumatic, as I mentioned to you before. They struggled to find a diagnosis. There were multiple blood draws. Some had liver biopsies, etc. Asked if they were alcoholics, if they were trying to kill themselves. That was very, very upsetting to many people for obvious reasons. And then trips back and forth to the hospital and experiencing liver damage because of the hydrazine in the water that required multiple hospitalizations.
And Dr. Sands, as a neuropsychologist, have you ever assessed patients with hepatic encephalopathy?
Yes.
Did plaintiff's medical records... Well, before I get there, what is hepatic encephalopathy?
It's characterized by liver failure that causes brain dysfunction. And so I want you to appreciate the liver and the brain are not near each other, but they are interconnected. And what happens is the toxins don't get filtered out by the faulty liver, so they go to the brain and cause psychiatric problems and cognitive problems. Some of the psychiatric are confusion, disorientation, can also result in coma. Some of the plaintiffs were unresponsive and woke up tied to gurneys. Also, personality changes and cognitive is difficulty paying attention, difficulty remembering, so it's a brain dysfunction because of the liver not doing its job, because it's damaged, and toxins in your brain leading to significant cognitive and psychiatric problems.
Did plaintiff's medical records show that they all suffered from various symptoms of hepatic encephalopathy?
Yes.
You mentioned that one of the things you did in this case was a literature review. Did plaintiff's medical records inform your literature review in this case?
Yes. Yes.
Well, and let me ask you to explain to the jury, what is a literature review?
It's something that you also would be able to do now with Google Scholar. But in general, when you work for a major medical center or hospital, you can put in terms, search terms. And so I'd put in hepatic encephalopathy or liver fibrosis and cognition and memory and anxiety, mood. And it searches articles that meet both those criteria because they all have keywords that are tagged to it. And then they're available in PDF format to download and review to inform your inquiry, to glean what advances have been made in science from other people at other institutions.
Is it important to review and consider scientific literature in your field?
Absolutely. You don't want to operate in isolation. You want to learn from people who've done similar studies and what their findings are. And it would inform your research, but it would also inform your clinical care of patients as well, both.
And as part of your literature review, did you study hydrazine?
Yes.
And I think you mentioned this earlier, that hydrazine is considered a neurotoxin?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury the significance of hydrazine being a neurotoxin?
We touched on it, but just to briefly review it, it causes liver damage, as I mentioned, in primates, humans, apes, rodents, mice, rats, and I mentioned to you that they also gave it to rodents and they developed cancer as well. And again, just to repeat myself briefly, it's it's not consumed often, thankfully. But when it does, it's been a direct causal relationship, and that's what begets the liver shutting down and the hepatic encephalopathy and the brain dysfunction. Yes.
You mentioned that you reviewed Dr. Hudson's report. Do you understand that Dr. Hudson will opine that all the plaintiffs in this case likely have fibrosis on their livers?
Yes.
Did you research the association between fibrosis and future cognitive impairments?
Yes.
Okay. We have some of your research articles. Shane, could you pull up Exhibit 110, page 2, please?
Might be a little small for you guys. Sorry about that, but I'll.
Could you tell the jury about this research article?
Yes. They, in the UK, studied 105,000 participants, which is a very large number. Many studies will have 100, 200, 400, not 105,000, which is massive. And the statistician who was here before talked to you about statistical analyses. When you're working with 105,000 patients, your findings are very robust and powerful. So there was two groups. There were those who had a diagnosis of fibrosis 6 years ago, not just recently, but 6 years ago, compared to people who do not have fibrosis. And they gave them very sensitive measures, very similar to the ones I gave in my testing. And they found statistically significant differences between these two groups on a bunch of really important variables. Specifically, one is executive functioning. I just want to explain it to you briefly. There's numbers and letters on the page, and you have to go 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D. And so many people get hung up and have trouble being cognitively flexible. And so, yes, it's assessing your ability for executive functioning, how you can solve new problems in a fast and efficient manner. So there were significant differences between the two groups, with the fibrosis group being diagnosed 6 years earlier, doing significantly worse. Also, another really powerful test that looks at being able to fill out a questionnaire, a form quickly, that you have to think and process quickly. And so their attention, processing speed, and working memory is how much information you can keep in your head for a minute or two. On this test, all three were required, were significantly different, that those who had fibrosis did worse. Also, a test of reaction time, also they did worse. And that's very, very powerful for many reasons, because of the numbers and because it was 6 years ago that they were diagnosed. So it's not like, oh, okay, you're done with your fibrosis, you're fine. No, that's not what it's saying. Also, a smaller subset, about 40,000, had MRIs of their brain. And I just want to tell you two more things that are really important. One is their hippocampus of those who had fibrosis was significantly smaller than those who didn't have fibrosis. And the hippocampus is the part of your brain that stores memory, that consolidates your memory to when you're learning. And the total brain volume was smaller for those who had fibrosis than the healthy population. And that's really important because that speaks to brain atrophy, which is correlated with cerebral dysfunction and other problems in the future, such as having memory issues, Alzheimer's, dementia, cerebral vascular disorder. Not to say that everyone will have that, but their brains were smaller, which is a marker for cerebral dysfunction, and their hippocampus was smaller than the healthy population, which also doesn't serve them well for their memory.
Dr. Sands, was this article peer-reviewed?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what peer-reviewed means?
We get requests from journals. Oh, this is an area of your expertise. Are you willing to review it? About 2 or 3 people get reviewed articles that were submitted for publication in the journal, and they don't just publish it, they send it out to peers to review. So I would often get neuropsychological manuscripts and other people, and we read it and come up with comments of, you can't really say that, or I'd like you to change this. We make comments and try to be cordial. And it goes back to the editor, who decides whether they should accept it or send it back to the author for modifications, and then it gets resubmitted, so that when you see an article published, you know it's been vetted by other professionals in the field, and so it has a lot of merit, and and has been reviewed by other experts in the field.
Can you tell the jury how this article was significant to your evaluations in this case?
We touched on it a little bit, but just to be specific, it struck me, the number of patients, it struck me that many of the difficulties, again, were 6 years after they had been diagnosed, which is very, I was talking to you before about pediatric cancer, for example, or adult cancer, that many of their problems can emerge over time. It's not, doesn't stop once you finish treatment. So it's that these problems are persisting. And the MRI data was also very compelling. And so it talks about the importance of fibrosis on the brain many years after diagnosis, and has a lot of implications for how these folks are going to navigate the world, their families, their spouses, their work, their school. So it made me really aware of significant problems to be mindful of. And yes.
Thank you, Dr. Sands. Did you also research whether there's an association between hepatic encephalopathy and future cognitive impairments?
Yes.
Shane, can you pull up Exhibit 136, page 2, please? Oh, maybe page 1 of this one, Shane, sorry. Did you review this article entitled Hepatic Encephalopathy, Critical Insights into Classification, Pathophysiology, and Therapy?
Yes, I did.
Was this article peer-reviewed?
Yes.
And can you explain this article to the jury?
Of course. So the summary really speaks loudly, and I just want to pull from a few parts of this and emphasize them to you. So hepatic encephalopathy, I had mentioned, is a frequent and serious complication of both chronic liver disease and acute liver failure. The acute liver failure is what these plaintiffs went through. There's no disputing that. Hepatic encephalopathy manifests a wide spectrum of as neuropsychiatric abnormalities, from subclinical changes, mild cognitive impairment, to marked disorientation, confusion, and coma, which is exactly what they told me happened to them. So that confirms this. It talks about the clinical and economic burden being considerable and contributes greatly to impaired quality of life. Quality of life is multidimensional. It comprised of many things, but we can reduce it to 4: physical, psychological, social, and emotional. And it's the quality of your life in those different domains during your day. And so it's contributing greatly to impaired quality of life. Morbidity is the next one, which is other problems coming up, not the initial diagnosis, but what else winds up happening because of the initial diagnosis, and mortality. Just jumping down to, in addition, I think that, I think those are the main parts. I think later on it talks about, just in the first paragraph, but I can explain to you. It says that we don't know enough about the long-term consequences of hepatic encephalopathy. Yeah, it's under the introduction. Anyway, so it's in there somewhere, but it says that we need to do a better job at figuring out how to get ahead of this, how to pick them out of a crowd earlier, and how to minimize their problems. And in this situation, in this situation, well, we'll talk about it. There's one more article I want to go through, but those are the main takeaways, and it is exactly describing what these plaintiffs went through.
And this article was published in the Journal of Hepatology, correct?
Yes. I want to say 2022.
Shane, can we look at Exhibit 135, first page, please? This is an article from the Annals of Hepatology entitled Current Approaches to Hepatic Encephalopathy. Did you review this article as part of your research?
Yes.
Was this article peer-reviewed?
Yes.
And can you explain the significance of this article to the jury?
Yes. So if we just went down to thank you. So the diagnosis of overt HE in the middle, next to, so actually, so even right before it, actually minimal HE is defined by the presence of signs of cognitive abnormalities in a patient without asterixis or disorientation. They can only be diagnosed with neuropsychological or psychometric tests, which is exactly what I provided. And so this author is saying that's what you need to be able to document problems that they're having. And then it goes on to say, the aims of treatment should be of acute, which is what they went through, is to improve their mental status, identify and treat the precipitating factor. I said to you before that they didn't know what the precipitating factor was. They thought they had food poisoning. They go home, drink more water. They're drinking more real water. They're out of it, can't get out of can't get up, can't talk, being brought to the hospital multiple times. So that was really a slow process because it wasn't clear what was the precipitating factor. Reduced the duration and limit consequences. I think the reduced duration is over time when they went back again and again and again. And it's in my report, but literally they just went through so many things that none of us would want to go through with these hospitals and clinics repeatedly, without any answers, without any clarity. The limit consequences, I wanted to just say to you, that's also what we're talking, that's my job, is to limit the consequences. The consequences means what's going to be downfield from this, what's going to happen after, and to limit that. And so that's the focus of my work as well, not just to assess, but to limit the consequences from this problem. And then lastly, it just says, there are still, down here, there are still many unanswered questions regarding the pathophysiology and management of HE. We should endeavor to develop more accurate and objective diagnostic methods that would permit early detection and help improve outcomes on quality of life and economic burden. So that's similar to the other article that talked about the diminished quality of life, which is tragic and a problem. And economic burden is just a way of talking about their medical expenses and the costs, not only so it's the emotional and physical, but also the financial burdens of having gone through this.
Dr. Sands, I want to transition and talk about your individual assessments in this case, but before I do, Your Honor, I don't know if now would be a good time for the afternoon break beforehand, or if I should keep going.
It's 3:05, probably 10 minutes. Yeah, I think a 10-minute break. Ladies and gentlemen, you're admonished not to converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on the subject of this trial, or to read, watch, listen to the report or the commentary on the trial by any persons connected with this case, or by any medium of information, including without limitations, newspaper, television, radio, social media. Remember the prohibition. And last but not least, do not form or express any opinion on any subject matter connected to this trial to the cause of finding submitted to you. And let's take 10.
10 minutes, Your Honor. All rise for the court to adjourn. Please be seated.
All right. And so I hope you enjoyed your break. We're going to continue on, Mr. Pepperman.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, sir.
All right, Dr. Sands, let's talk about your individual assessments of the plaintiffs here. What did your assessments entail?
As mentioned, I reviewed their medical records that were made available to me. I met with everyone individually for a few hours each, at which time I performed a clinical interview, found out how pregnancy, birth, delivery, developmental milestones, school education, work, any problems they're having, and then administered carefully selected tests and questionnaires to really gain an accurate assessment of their strengths and weaknesses, because I'm looking for both.
And what were the neuropsychological measures that you administered?
I evaluated 7 patients in person and 5 remotely. So they were very similar, but there were a few pieces that I couldn't transport to, because they were in their home. But essentially, a test of effort where they had to respond in a certain amount of time and be accurate. Also, a groove pegboard where we look at fine motor dexterity with their right hand filling in individual pegs into a hole. How long does it take you? Left hand, same thing. gave them the R-bands, which is a battery of neuropsychological tests that look at your verbal and visual memory, because it could be different, your language, your expressive and receptive language, your visual spatial abilities, and your attention concentration and processing speed, which are really central components of functioning. Also gave them a few questionnaires. One is an executive functioning questionnaire where they rate themselves on their cognitive executive functioning ability, which we'll talk about, but it's basically your ability to be planful of your time, the materials you need, and get things done. Also, it's frontal lobe, also your emotional regulation, how you manage your mood, and lastly, your behaviors, if you're impulsive or not impulsive. So that's a questionnaire. And then a PTSD questionnaire that looks at the most stressful event they've ever experienced in their life, and we'll talk about that. And then lastly, the MMPI-3, which is a very well validated measure also of their personality functioning, and it consists of around 370 true-false questions.
And the tests and measures that you administered in this case are they all standard tests that are administered in the forensic neuropsychological assessment like you did here?
Yes.
I think you mentioned this, but did you administer validity tests to assess the plaintiff's effort and consistency?
Yes, for the 7 who were in person, I administered a standalone measure, which means the point of that test is to, again, see how quickly and accurately they can respond. I wasn't able to do it remotely. And then the 2 questionnaires, as I mentioned to you, the executive functioning questionnaire and the MMPI, both have embedded validity measures in there to make sure people are answering accurately.
Why administer validity tests like that?
In a forensic setting, as you can imagine, when there's a legal issue and money at stake, my job for an independent medical evaluation is to meet with someone, make them feel comfortable, but explain to them that I expect them to pay attention and try their best. And if they don't do that, it's going to be apparent, and it's not going to serve them. So please, it's important. Are you able to do that? Yes. And I want to be able to say that the data I received is accurate, that it really reflects their strengths and their weaknesses compared to their same age peers. So it's really important for me to have valid data, and I go out of my way to, as most people do, to make sure that that's the case.
Were all your results considered valid?
Yes.
I believe there was one for Abraham Olvera.
Yes.
There was a validity issue.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Sure. Abraham, the MMPI I was mentioning to you is 370 true-false questions, and it's taxing. It could take 45 minutes, and but it's a very important measure to give. In retrospect, that was the only test that came back as invalid. It couldn't be scored, not because he intentionally tried to misanswer questions. He just went, for the most part, true, to get it over with. So therefore, it couldn't be scored. So that is, thank you for reminding me, that is the one measure that was deemed invalid based on his response pattern.
And that invalid measure, did that change your opinions in this case?
No.
Okay. Or I should ask the better question is, did it affect your ability to draw conclusions with respect to Abraham in this case?
No, it did not.
Okay. If validity measures indicate possible underreporting or overreporting, what does that mean?
Specifically to that MMPI, for example, but the executive functioning, you take one step back, is there's 3 validity indicators. One is negativity. If you're overly negative, it's going to, compared to what's expected for people your age. Or if you're inconsistent, they have questions that are asked twice, maybe 10 or 12 of them. They're asked worded a little differently to make sure you're consistent. And infrequency. These, I forget where I live, kind of to make sure someone's paying attention and answering accurately. And then the MMPI has validity measures as well built in. If some plaintiffs were flagged for under-reporting, which means that they were endorsing an excessive amount of positive virtues. Things like, I like everybody I meet, I never tell a lie, it's an example, which is less commonly endorsed for people their age. Conversely, over-reporting would be an excessive, higher than expected for their age, reporting of certain areas, certain domains.
Does an indication of either underreporting or overreporting in one context automatically mean that the person is lying?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Based on your assessments and interviews, do you believe that any of the people here were lying to you or exaggerating the trauma of their experiences during your assessment of them?
No, in my professional opinion, I've been doing this for over 25 years. I developed a very good rapport with every single one, and I can honestly say they paid attention, tried their best, and the data they produced was very informative, and I stand by it.
Shane, can we pull up the slide on the test results? What are we looking at here, Dr. Sands?
Sure. So the top column would be the plaintiff's name. Fine motor was that bilateral, was the putting the pegs in the board. Executive functioning is the questionnaire I was talking to you about their cognitive, emotional, behavioral, frontal lobe functioning, their ability to manage their behavior, their being able to multitask, get things done. PTSD, I mentioned to you before, is the post-traumatic stress disorder questionnaire, the PCL-5. Cognitive impairment was the R-bands, which has many different domains I was talking to you about: memory, attention, visual spatial, language, processing speed. And then the MMPI is personality inventory. So that's what they're looking at.
Okay. Let's go through and you can explain your results for each of the individuals here. Sure. Let's start with Nigel Davis Richard.
Okay. So Nigel had impaired fine motor functioning bilaterally, both hands. It doesn't always happen that way, but both his hands were really slow in terms of how long it took him. So he clearly has fine motor difficulty. He said that his executive functioning on the brief was normal, within normal limits. Yes, he endorsed some problems, but it didn't reach the threshold of executive functioning problems.
Well, let me stop you,
Sure,
Dr.
please.
Sands. When you say within normal limits, what are we talking about in terms of the limits?
Sure. So there's two ways, essentially, when people. So for this measure, for example, it's there's a mean score, and if it's elevated up to a certain level, I want to say 1.5 standard deviations above the mean, then it gets flagged. So all his scores were not in the significant range. Some get elevated, and the way they're elevated, but subclinical, meaning they're approaching clinical significance, but they're not there. But the person said things that made it go higher than the mean, than the average. So there was nothing that crossed over the threshold for saying he had executive functioning problems.
And based on your research in this case, are these individuals who may be within normal limits now, or at the time that you tested them, are they still at risk for deficits in the future?
Yes. I like using this example just because I'm a runner. If you have deficits that maybe are elevated but haven't crossed over, if they're untreated, if they're unassessed, not assessed, and untreated, then they continue to cause a problem day in and day out moving forward. So my example is if we all start together running the Las Vegas Marathon, and I'm running a 9-minute pace, but you guys are running an 8-minute pace, the first hour you're ahead of me, the second hour you're even further ahead of me. So I'm falling behind because I'm not keeping up with you. And so that's exactly the phenomenon that can happen. It's not guaranteed to happen for everyone, but that can happen, and that's why it's really important to be proactive, try to jump on deficits early so you can close the gap and not wait till it's really far gone and really hard to close.
Okay, let's continue on with Nigel.
Thank you for indulging me in my running. Anyway, so the PTSD, he's saying that there are some symptoms. Doesn't mean he's saying I don't have any symptoms, but it did not cross the aggregate number threshold. Cognitive impairment, you're going to see a pattern emerge. We'll talk about it later. But attention and memory are coming up, and language for Nigel. And on the MMPI, having behavioral, should be comma, and interpersonal difficulties, problems in his daily life.
Okay. Let's go to Carrie Mono.
Sure. Carrie did fine on the pegboard, had no problems. Her time to put them in was fine. He was saying that he does have executive functioning difficulty, and there are specific areas that can be drilled down. It's not just all executive functioning, there's very different components. Carrie's saying his PTSD symptoms don't cross the threshold for a diagnosis. He did fine on other areas of cognition, with the exception of attention. And he also is noting emotional, behavioral, interpersonal difficulties. And in the report, it gets more specific, but this is a summary page for each of these people.
Nicole Chang.
Fine motor was normal limits by both hands. Executive functioning, Nicole says, I'm okay with executive functioning. Nicole did endorse sufficient symptoms that's consistent with a diagnosis of PTSD. And then cognitive impairment was normal across all the different measures. And the personality problems, mentioning bodily complaints, somatic just means stomach ache, headache, nausea, fatigue, cognitive problems, thinking clearly, and emotional difficulty. And I just want to say that you're seeing a mixed bag, right? You're seeing people who are performing well in certain areas, but also telling you that other things are problems for them. And that's really important to appreciate the range of scores here.
Abraham.
Abraham had impaired bilaterally both hands, fine motor, and executive functioning. He's saying that he is impaired in terms of his frontal lobe functioning, his being organized, getting things done. Also is acknowledging the diagnosis of clinically significant PTSD symptoms. Also, yet another person who's coming out with attention and memory problems, and then the other areas are not impaired. Abraham was the one who mostly was saying true, and so I couldn't score his MMPI.
JJ Delmar.
Fine motor was normal. JJ is saying he had impaired executive functioning and also is endorsing symptoms consistent with the diagnosis of PTSD. Cognitive functioning within normal limits across all the domains. Personality, you're seeing a pattern here. So this is heavily loaded here in terms of issues. Cognitive, emotional, interpersonal, behavioral, somatic, bodily, and emotional for JJ, who is clearly struggling in many different areas.
And how about Vanya Diaz?
Within normal limits for fine motor. Executive functioning, saying I don't have significant problems. I have some, but they're not crossing the threshold. Although my symptoms for PTSD are warranting a diagnosis of PTSD. I have cognitive impairment specifically within the area of attention, and somatic and emotional personality problems, difficulty on the MMPI.
Vanya testified the other day that she has what she referred to as health anxiety. Is that what is referred to in the somatic and emotional problems?
Yes.
Okay. Meaning when she gets sick, she gets very scared because of this experience.
And that dovetails with anxiety. PTSD is anxiety based, and so they're hyper vigilant about, oh my God, I hope I don't get sick again. They were extremely concerned about what they eat, what they drink, who they hang out with, and they get very anxious about all those issues.
Was that common in your assessment of all the plaintiffs?
Yes, and what I find fascinating, just to state the obvious, they didn't meet and talk and hey, this is what we're going to say to Dr. Sands. They're all totally independent, and they're coming up with the same stories and the same profiles, or very common profiles, which is reaffirming for late effects from hydrocine.
Let's talk about Andrea Bourdonnais.
Andrea, fine motor functioning is normal. Also executive functioning, she's saying nothing clinically significant, but she is endorsing symptoms consistent with a diagnosis of PTSD. Also for cognitive impairment, specifically in the areas of attention and processing speed. And then personality, emotional, and interpersonal difficulties.
How about Ginger Land Van Buren?
Fine motor, normal limits. Impaired executive functioning in specific areas. Also, symptoms of PTSD that cross the threshold for diagnosis, and cognitive impairment of attention, and personality difficulty, somatic, again, body, you're seeing that. You're seeing cognitive come up often. You're seeing emotional come up often, and interpersonal and thought difficulties.
Now, starting with Carolyn Strong on fine motor, we see NA. What does that mean?
The pegboard is a heavy metal box with pegs in it, and so I did a remote assessment, so there's no way that they could do that.
So can you go over Carolyn Strong's results?
Yes. So Carolyn's saying she has aspects of her executive functioning are impaired compared to others her age. Also experiencing PTSD symptoms that are commensurate with the diagnosis. The cognitive functioning is within normal limits across all the domains. And yet personality, saying having cognitive difficulties and interpersonal difficulties compared to others her age.
How about Cheryl Nally?
Also impaired executive functioning, post-traumatic stress symptoms present but not crossing a threshold, so within normal limits. Cognitive impairment, normal across all domains compared to others her age. And also personality, saying that generally I'm okay, there's nothing elevated beyond that should be of concern for my personality.
How about Glenn Morris?
Within normal limits for executive functioning, also endorses symptoms consistent with PTSD diagnosis, attention and memory, again, as a pattern we're seeing, and emotional, thought, behavior, interpersonal are coming up as problems for Glenn in his daily life.
And finally, Lisa King.
Executive functioning being rated by hers within normal limits, her symptoms of PTSD reaching a threshold of a diagnosis, no cognitive impairment for her at the present time, and having some bodily complaints and difficulties focusing on her physical functioning and the relationships with others, interpersonal.
Dr. Sands, is it your opinion that it is more probable than not that all of the impairments that we see here that you just went over are related to the injuries the plaintiff sustained from consuming real water?
Yes, it's my professional opinion based on my years of work, reviewing the literature, speaking with them, that it's more probable than not that it's a result of exposure to a toxin in hydrazine in real water.
Okay. Did you assess each separate plaintiff individually?
Yes.
Okay. You didn't say Nigel has impaired attention, therefore every other individual must have the exact same impairment, did you?
No, I'm driven by the data. I score it up for each person.
Okay. After considering all the data for each plaintiff individually, did you also consider those individual assessments in the aggregate?
Yes.
And were you able to glean additional information by looking at all of the individuals in the aggregate?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you explain that to the jury? Shane, if we could go to the next slide.
Yeah, of course. This is an emerging science generally, and I mentioned that fortunately there are few, not an excessive number of people who've ingested toxins and hydrazine specifically in real water. And they were doing it, they were drinking real water because they said, oh, it's expensive, but I want to improve my life, improve my health. I'm doing it to help myself and feel better and be better. Yes, as I was mentioning to you, their stories were very, very common. And not all, but there are threads of commonality that I wanted to point out to you. So now's a good time. So anyway, the PCL-5 is a PTSD questionnaire. And so 9 of the 12 plaintiffs, that's 75%, which is not a small percentage. That's a huge percentage. And I'm specific. I'm not saying everybody. I'm saying Nicole, Abraham, JJ, Vanya, Andrea, and Ginger, Carolyn, Glenn, and Lisa met diagnostic criteria for PTSD. So I'm not lumping everyone in and saying you all have this. Do I think that those who don't meet the criteria could potentially be diagnosed later on? Yes, that's a distinct possibility. But at the moment, these are the 9 plaintiffs. And it's a
Dr. Sands, let me ask you, does the fact that preponderance or a majority of the individuals are currently demonstrating symptoms associated for clinical PTSD, does that lend to you or information that makes you think that the others, even if they're not currently exhibiting the symptoms, are more probable than not to experience symptoms related to PTSD in the future?
Yeah, so sorry if I wasn't clear, but yes, that's exactly what I was saying. That these 9 have endorsed symptoms consistent with the diagnosis, but others are endorsing symptoms. It's not that they're saying, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. It's just didn't cross the threshold. I want to give you an example. There's a plaintiff, Morris, who was in Baghdad, excuse me, in 2004, 2005, approximately, or 2004, 2007, excuse me. And it wasn't until 2017, 10 years later, that he thought about killing himself, and 10 years later at the same time went to see a doctor, a psychiatrist, and a therapist, and got diagnosed with PTSD. So it's a moving target. It's not that, oh, you don't have it, you're fine. It took him, someone who was in Baghdad for 2 years, 10 years after to be diagnosed and have emotional, if you're thinking of taking your life, that's about as serious as it gets.
And you bring up another good point. If an individual like Mr. Morris had previously been diagnosed with PTSD, how does that affect your analysis of him in relation to his incident caused by real water?
It would be yet another stressor for him. It wouldn't be less stressful going through a real water experience. It would be on top of, and very traumatic and very overwhelming, in addition to the trauma that he had many years ago. And on this questionnaire, it says, what's the most stressful event in your life? And so he could have said Baghdad. I didn't tell him what to say. He put every single person put down real water. And then they fill out questions of, in the last month, how much have you been bothered by these thoughts as it relates to the real water experience?
So you don't just say, oh, well, you already had PTSD, so therefore you can't get PTSD again.
No, that would be nonsensical, exactly.
Next slide, Shane, please.
MMPI, also striking, 10 out of 11 plaintiffs. And the only reason it's not 12 is because that one person was just saying, true, 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 so I couldn't score it. But so the denominator here is 11. 10 out of 11, 91%. It's independent medical evaluation for people who don't know each other and never talk to each other. Successfully completed the MMPI 3. Varying degrees of significant and debilitating symptoms that tended to consistently include health, which is, you can imagine, right? They had health crises. Neurological, in terms of their body, their legs, their feet, their hands, somatic complaints, as well as anxiety and worry. I heard that all the time. And it's problematic for the 10 plaintiffs. And again, this is not everyone's feeling the same way. We're not saying that. We're saying Nigel has behavioral and interpersonal problems. Carrie has emotional, behavioral, interpersonal, etc. So each person has specific and different areas of concern. I will tell you that some commonalities are a little bit of somatic coming across, anxiety, and emotion. So not everyone has the same thing, but there's the common thread that's a consistent pattern these people are experiencing.
And is that consistent with the literature that you reviewed?
Yes. We'll see that at the end, but yes, we were talking about, I can talk about it now or later, but I had said to you before that those who had fibrosis were significantly worse on executive functioning, were worse on attention, working memory, and processing speed, and then had smaller hippocampus for memory and smaller brains. And then also we talked about the hepatic encephalopathy, that those folks had cognitive problems. They said attention and memory, I don't know if you remember, and also personality changes. So yes, it's consistent with what's expected from those two diagnoses. And the literature is so in early phases that there are going to be other people in this courtroom who are going to say, oh, no, they're fine. No, they're not fine. We don't know that. And 91% is not telling me they're fine.
And just because one of them is not exhibiting behavioral problems at this point in time, does that mean there's no risk in the future for this to come up?
Agreed. For the reasons I said before. If you're anxious or you have poor executive functioning when you're with your family, you're at work, you're out with your friends, it's going to dovetail and get worse. but you're already pushing, 10 out of 11, so there's not much more room. It's pretty robust finding.
Can you go to the next slide, please, Shane?
So the brief A was the questionnaire for executive functioning, and half, not all, half of them said that they reported significant executive functioning problems in their daily life, and here they are. So I'm not saying every single person has executive functioning problems, but that is consistent with the literature. And in my report, there are specific areas, domains of executive functioning that I was mentioning to you before. So it's not like, executive functioning is one thing. We can also develop specific assessment plans and intervention plans based on the specific and individual executive functioning difficulty that's outlined in the report based on their questionnaire that they're exhibiting.
Shane, next slide, please.
And then the R bands is the neuropsych questionnaire that I was mentioning to you. So 7 of 12, again, not 100%, 58% demonstrated specific cognitive deficits and weaknesses. And again, it's not everyone had problems, and it's not everyone had the same problem. So Nigel, immediate verbal memory, attention, Carrie Mano, working memory, Abraham Olvera, immediate verbal memory, attention, Vanya Diaz, attention, Andrea Bourdonnais of attention processing speed, Ginger Van Buren attention, and Glenn Morris attention memory. I will say, interestingly, that I'm seeing a lot of attention and memory, which, if you remember, is what exactly they were talking about in the literature we reviewed from liver fibrosis, right, and hepatic encephalopathy. So it appears to me that 7 out of 12 are having difficulty. And there's some overlap with what they're having difficulty with. And just 2 things I want to say to you are, I focused on these when the statistician was here showing you that graph, that bell-shaped graph. So the way I look at it is every 100 people your age is percentile. There's really no 100th percentile. It's like 99.9. So if you're at the first percentile, you're like the beginning of the line and you're really delayed. And if you're at the 99th percentile, you're at the front of the line and have a lot of that whatever that is.
Can we approach?
Yes. Gentlemen, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can I proceed?
Yes, please.
So the only thing I wanted to say to you is these areas, now that you know the percentiles, and most people congregate in the middle, but these scores are anywhere below the first percentile, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, maybe seventh percentile. So these are significant problems. These are not normal average scores. They are way below at the back of the line. And so these are significant real problems compared to their same age peers. I just wanted to put that in perspective.
Dr. Sands, can you tell the jury what your conclusions are in this case?
So yes, as a result of ingesting hydrazine, which has been shown to induce liver damage in real water, these 12 plaintiffs suffered psychiatric, cognitive, social, emotional, behavioral dysfunction, as borne out by their medical records, their personal discussions with me about the experience, and the test data that I stand by. All the plaintiffs, in my professional opinion, are more likely than not to suffer from diminished quality of life, and that's sacred. Your quality of life is how you go about your day and how you feel about yourself, how you feel about your relationships and your work. We spend a lot of time in my field trying to improve quality of life. Because of, for them, impaired psychiatric, cognitive, social, emotional, behavioral dysfunctions. So yes, what I stand by is close monitoring, which is consistent with people who've had brain injuries, brain dysfunction, and other problems too, not just limited to that. So close monitoring, follow-up, and intervention is warranted and necessary for each plaintiff. So as I said to you before, because problems are current, that need to be closed before they cause more problems. And you don't want to wait to 10 years later when they're so far behind and are doing God knows what and really problematic. So it's all about, to me, early intervention and proactive early intervention to try to close these gaps and improve their lives.
Now, your conclusions are similar for all of the 12 individuals who you assessed, correct?
Yes.
Why?
Because they all went through the same experience and they describe it very, very similarly. And they all had damage to their brain from the hydrazine, and their liver wasn't working properly to filter it out. And they all had psychiatric and cognitive problems. Many of them, and the vast majority in some cases, are still reporting them, amidst other areas that they're saying it's not a problem. So the recommendation, which we'll talk about, is close monitoring, follow-up, and intervention, but it's going to differ by the individual. So the recommendation is similar because they need close monitoring and follow-up, but what each person receives is going to be different based on what they need. And I was telling you before, right? They didn't all have the same difficulties. I got very specific on the problem areas they had.
Let's get to your recommendations in this case. What are they?
So in my professional opinion, having done this with the very stressful, life-threatening children, adolescents, young adults, and adults, I'm a lifespan neuropsychologist. I work with patients of all ages. There's more likely than not that they're going to have, and you're already seeing it in the questionnaires and the test data. So for me, it's to be responsible, conservative, and ethical, and empathic, just to say four that first come to my mind, to provide psychological and psychiatric evaluation. So a psychologist does an in-depth evaluation, and a psychiatrist does an in-depth evaluation. The costs are there. Each market varies. So I'm not hung up on the money part, but they need to be evaluated, and it's more likely than not that they're going to need therapy and potentially medication for their mood. So that would be after the evaluation, depending upon the results. But I think more likely than not, they're going to need therapy and medication, and I want to provide that opportunity. That's my recommendation for them. For a period of up to 4 years. Some people might need 5 years, some people might need 2 or 3. I don't have a crystal ball. I know that Andrea and Lisa have more significant problems, and so they may be 4 or 5 years. Other people might need 2, 3, but they need to be provided with therapy and potentially medication so that they can come to terms with what they went through, reconstitute, try to better manage their cognitive functioning, better manage their emotional functioning, and move on with their lives.
Okay. And typically these evaluations cost $1,500 to $2,000. Is that fair?
Yes, at a national level.
And services range in, $300 to $400 a session is a reasonable amount.
Yes.
And if we added all those up, we would get to approximately $85,200, correct?
Right. Which is money well spent. The future neuropsychological evaluations and services is the second part, where it's what I do. Remember how on the R bands they had specific deficits that were in the first, second, third, fourth, fifth percentile? You can't just say, okay, you're fine, go on with your life. You need a more in-depth assessment, and the evaluation and services could be things like, hey, remember how those people had fine motor difficulty? So occupational therapy works with fine motor deficit. You have the difficulty with your legs, you need gross motor. Some adults had speech and language difficulty. You need speech and language therapy. Executive functioning was a huge one, and attention and memory. So there are people who do cognitive remediation to help them pay attention, to help them better manage their life and be more productive and successful and happy. So yes, the second part is an evaluation and services. That would be approximately 1 time per week for up to 4 years. Again, some may need more and some may need less, but I'm trying to be responsible and ethical here.
And this doesn't refer to all the same services.
Right, exactly. Yes, I tried to show you that when we looked at the aggregate, that didn't all say they had the same issues, and they can drill down specifically to what their problems are and help them now.
So the evaluations can range in cost, and your reasonable approximation would be between $5,000 and $10,000, correct?
Yes.
And your approximation on the cost of these services are between $200 and $250 per session?
Yes.
And if we add all that up with the maximum amount, we're talking up to $60,000?
Yes. The only thing I would just cautionary, there may be some people who need multiple services, like attention, memory, and occupational therapy, for example. So some people may need 2 It's not that, oh, you're only going to get one service. So there may be individuals who need, not all, but some people might need multiple different services.
Is it possible that some of the plaintiffs will benefit from multiple evaluations?
Yes, and I might not have been as clear when I wrote my report, but yes, what you want to do is then retest them after you give them the intervention. Say, wow, you really improved. That's fantastic. We can stop. Or, you know what, you haven't made the improvement. Let's, instead of once a week, let's go twice a week, which is also another option. So yes, there's a reassessment, just like with psychiatric. Hey, how's your anxiety now a month later, 6 months later? How's your depression? How's your PTSD? So yes, it's monitoring them to see if they're benefiting from these interventions and to titrate it that way.
But to be clear, these numbers, that they only include a single evaluation for each individual?
Yes.
Okay. Have you seen a report from an expert neuropsychologist retained by Real Water disagreeing with a single one of your opinions in this case?
No, I have not.
How about criticizing your methodology or opinions as, quote, cookie cutter?
No, I have not.
Okay. And Dr. Sands, have all the opinions that you've testified to today been to a reasonable degree of neuropsychological probability?
Yes.
That one chart, the summary chart, you had all those damn schematic and stuff. Eglin thought you needed to define it a little bit. You know, go back and define what they mean in the chart. You know, do what I'm talking about.
Dr. Sands, Shane, can we go back to your chart? I want to make sure that the jury understands what we're talking about in terms of these deficits. So can you just go through and explain a little bit in more detail what the deficits are when you are referring to them in your chart?
So I want to be clear and want to make sure you understand this. Fine motor. So we're comparing people to their same age peers, and that bell-shaped curve, where do they fall in the bell-shaped curve? You know, are they just like other people their age, or are they ahead of them, or are they behind them?
Well, what does it mean if someone's impaired in their fine motor skills?
So once you figure out how long it takes Nigel to pick up the pegs and put them on a board, then you look at how, by his age, how long it's supposed to take him, and then just to keep it simple, you divide by the standard deviation, like how many, see how far away he is from his mean, and to see how far along that curve he is.
And how does that affect someone in their daily life generally?
Fine motor functioning, anywhere from typing to using the cell phone, to if someone has manual labor, would not be a good fit. And there's compensatory strategies. Occupational therapy is for developing your fine motor skills, but also using adaptive technology, whether it's voice recognition software to dictate, whether it's working on your keyboarding skills. And then sometimes people are really slow and are illegible writing, which could be a problem.
What about executive functioning? Can you explain a little bit more detail with that?
Of course. So I was mentioning to you before, it's frontal lobe. Frontal lobe does many things, but three things are your emotions. So if you're overly excitable and really go from 0 to 100 really quickly, that's part of what your frontal lobes control, as well as being aware of the impact you have on others, as opposed to being kind of not reading the room, so to speak. I don't know if you can relate to people who kind of just in their own world. And then behavioral are things like, are you impulsive? Are you just talking over everybody? And there was an expression in Spanish that the person didn't have any hair on their tongue, which I thought was really apt. It means there's no filter. They just think it and they say it. And that's frontal lobe functioning too. And that can jam you up, unfortunately, in certain situations. And then cognitively is being able to pay attention to one thing and not get distracted, or multitask and do two things at once. Make sure you start on time, you don't wait till the last minute, that you have what you need, and that you don't get stuck in the problem-solving approach, that if it's not working, you kind of like shift and you don't get stuck. And then do you actually complete your tasks? So as you can imagine, all those are critically important for daily life, right? And we're all, the things I just said to you, we're not all perfect in those. Everyone has strengths, everyone has weaknesses. But they're indicating that these are components of that are significant problems for them, much higher than their other age peers, and that's going to create problems in their daily life.
Personality problems?
So jump over PTSD.
Oh, you can do PTSD, sorry.
Sorry, whatever. So PTSD, being really anxious, and again, everyone's different. There's no one type of PTSD, but some of the symptoms can involve really being hypervigilant, avoidant, anxious, and it's really, really, really can be unsettling to somebody. Cognitive impairment, if you can't pay attention and can't remember, that's not setting you up well for your work and your personal life and your family life. One of the things is if given 3 things to do, only remembers the first or second kind of thing, that's, a problem. And attention memory seems to be coming up a lot. Going to the grocery store, not remembering everything you needed, or coming home without the stuff. And again, we all do some of that stuff. I find fascinating that we're all over this, but it's when it becomes a significant problem and significantly impairs your life. That's when you need an intervention. And then personality, yes, is difficulties on the MMPI in terms of how you see the world, how you interact with others, how you behave. Are you impulsive? Are you aggressive? Do you get anxious? Do you focus on your body so much that you're like super focused on all your pains and aches and oh my God, I'm getting sick. I'm going to die. Interpersonal, that came up a lot. Not feeling comfortable with other people in situations, being really withdrawn and not going out to restaurants or being very, very, very specific about what you eat, what you drink. And that's not healthy in terms of your functioning.
So I think you described emotional, behavioral, interpersonal. What does somatic mean?
I was just mentioning they tend to focus on their body. I got a headache again today, or I have a stomach ache. I can't go to work, or I'm nauseous, or I think I'm getting sick. And some of that's real. It's but it's to the degree that exceeds expectations for their age and gender. So it's not just us being once in a while, oh, my throat is sore. It's excessive and problematic from a personality standpoint, and asking for, intervention. It's screaming out for intervention.
What does a cognitive personality problem mean?
That's probably cognitive and then separate personality. But cognitive is my brain doesn't work well. I fail even when I try to get something done. Things are harder for me than other people. I'm forgetful. I hope I don't get. I think I might be getting dementia. So just questioning your cognitive function, your cognitive abilities.
What does emotional personality problem mean?
So emotional is getting back to excessive anxiety and rumination. Going to bed, and again, it can vary by individual. It's a title, and it's, hey, what did they endorse within that title? But it's being anxious when you go to bed in the morning, feeling really uncomfortable around other people, and not knowing if you can act like yourself, and how are people going to view you, and should you say something, should you not say something, how should you act, and just being anxious in general. And again, it depends on the individual.
What does a behavioral personality problem mean?
Sometimes people are impulsive or aggressive, or so I think it's tending towards not pro-social behaviors, but basically behaviors that are not. And again, it depends on the individual. It's a bucket, but could be antisocial, could be aggressive, could be distrustful of others. Things like that. Not willing to trust people, engage with people.
What does a thought personality problem mean?
Thought is an example of a question is true or false. Most people are self-motivated. They are only motivated to do things if it's in their best interest. Like thinking people are all selfish. So it's how you view the world in terms of I'm paranoid. People are out to get me. I can't ask for help. No one understands me. Those kind of things.
Finally, what does an interpersonal personality problem mean?
Getting along with other people. Sometimes you could be too bossy. Some people came off as domineering, and Being bossy and domineering and like, I'm right, there's no room for discussion, or, I think that's part of interpersonal is having trouble getting along with people and can involve my way or the highway. And again, I'm giving you examples, but it's not limited to that.
Thank you, Dr. Sands. I'll pass the witness.
What are you gonna do with the exhibit? You're gonna admit it or no?
All the articles that were referenced have already been admitted as exhibits.
What about the charge?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we'll mark it next in order, which should be 1206. And move to admit, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, what is 1206? Everything you showed?
Yeah, the chart. The chart.
The chart, 1206. Thank you.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Is 1206 right, Madam Clerk?
That's correct.
All right, shall be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Hello, Dr. Sands.
Hello.
My name is Brad Johnson. We ever met before?
Not sure, maybe in the deposition online? I'm not sure.
Maybe so. You look familiar to me. Would you tell the jury how it came to be that you even got involved in this case? I mean, I'm assuming these 12 folks didn't just show up on your doorstep.
True. It was a referral from a colleague to the law firm. It was a referral from a colleague to the law firm.
Okay, and who was the colleague?
Is that relevant? I'm happy to tell you. I said, is that relevant? I'm happy to tell you.
Yeah, it's relevant.
Mark Mills.
Mark Mills. Mark Mills is does a lot of expert work, doesn't he?
Yes. He's got an MBA, an MD, and JD.
Okay. And is this the only 12 folks that you've done assessments for as related to real water?
Your Honor, can we approach please?
And counsel, thank you.
The 12 people that you saw in this particular case referred to you from plaintiff's counsel based upon a referral from Mark Mills. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And those 12 people that you saw, were they aware of why you were seeing them?
I was not privy to conversations the law firm had with them, but when I met with all of them, I explained why I was evaluating them.
Right, that would be the ethical thing to do, correct? Yes. You explained to them that you had been retained by plaintiff's counsel to interview them and ultimately provide opinions and recommendations in support of their claims, in this case as plaintiffs. You explained that to them.
Yes.
So would it surprise you that each of these individuals had strikingly similar concerns that they expressed to you regarding their real water exposure? That's what you'd expect, wouldn't it?
I hear you. I apologize. I want to answer your question. Can you clarify?
Well, it's your words. You said they had strikingly similar concerns and stories with one another. Did you not say that?
I may have. I don't remember saying concerns. They're stories of how what the events that led up to the diagnosis, and their experiences were strikingly similar. I don't remember that I mentioned concerns. If I did,
well, are their experiences not their concerns? Did they not have concerns that they expressed to you regarding what they were feeling as a result of their exposure to hydrazine and real water?
I administered questionnaires and elicited their, as you mentioned, concerns, and scored them, and they're not all the same.
No, they're not.
Right.
My question is about their strikingly similar concerns. Did that surprise you? That's a yes or no.
I don't understand your question.
Say again?
I don't understand your question.
Okay. Let's phrase the question based upon your recollection of your answer. When you said that you were surprised how strikingly similar information was that was supplied to you by all of the plaintiffs, what were you referring to?
Specifically, I was referring to their independent recollection of the events that led up to how they were feeling physically, their relationship with the hospitals, their fear that they were going to die.
Those are called concerns. Did that surprise you that those concerns were strikingly similar based upon the manner in which you were introduced to these people?
Did it surprise me? I thought it was remarkable.
So it did surprise you.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you're going, but yes, I thought it was unusual that they had similar experiences. Yes, that did strike me.
Even though they knew why they were coming to see you. Correct?
Yes.
All right. Was it striking to you that each of these individuals, despite their varied backgrounds, stated that the most traumatic thing that they had ever experienced was real water? Did that surprise you?
No, because that follows from their discussing the events that they went through, that they endured, which were traumatic and upsetting. So no, it did not surprise me.
It also didn't surprise you because you were seeing them directed by plaintiff's counsel to support their claims of injury related to real water.
I'm not sure what you're suggesting, but I always explain that I'm hired by a law firm. I don't work for the law firm. And there's a blank sheet of paper and they fill out their concerns. I don't guide them or tell them what to say.
Would you agree that each of the 12 individuals that you interviewed, that you tested, and you reviewed the medical records that were presented to you by plaintiff's counsel were varied? There's differences in each and every individual situation.
When you, I just want to be clear and answer your questions. When
Sure.
you say their situation, are you talking about their test scores? Are you talking about their medical history?
I'm talking about everything. They were all different, were they not?
It's very hard to be so general. I can't talk about everything. If you want to be more specific, I'm happy to answer you.
Were they all the same age?
No,
Did they all have the same results of testing?
no,
Did they all have evidence of the same validity problems with their testing?
can you clarify what you just said?
Sure, you said some had validity problems with their testing. Did they all have that?
I didn't say that.
You didn't? You didn't say that somebody had a invalid test?
That's a different question, and please be specific.
I am being specific.
No, you're not. So the MMPI.
Is that a
yes.
test, sir? Is MMPI a test?
Yes.
Okay.
It
Were
was.
these allowed
Answer the
to
question.
answer the question?
Sustained.
Thank you.
It was invalid because of his response style. Yes.
Right, so-
Just be specific, and I'll answer you.
But I am being specific.
You're not.
All the tests that you gave,
Mhm.
were they all the same answers? All the same results?
No, people's profiles differed.
To the extent of their medical care, were they the same?
There was a lot of commonality, but there were some differences. Yes.
The tests that you provided to each one of those individuals, were they the same?
Yes for the in-person, and yes for the remote.
So that would be no, because I asked for all 12. You didn't give all 12 the same test, did you?
Correct. I explained why, but yes, you are correct.
And whether or not those tests were done in person or remotely were not the same, were they?
The administration was different. Yes.
Guess what? I'm sorry.
Yes, the administration was different between in-person versus
That
remote.
was different as well. Was their exposure to hydrazine the same amongst each of the individuals you saw?
No.
So, in summary, the ages were different, the results of their testing was different, whether they had evidence of validity problems were different, the extent of their medical care was different, the tests that you provided were different, the number of tests you provided were different, and whether or not those tests were done live or remotely were different. Correct?
No, I think you're twisting words.
Okay, what words did I twist?
Validity problems.
Okay, we just went over that.
We did. There was one measure that was inaccurate. It's not invalid for, he didn't answer it properly, and the tests didn't differ, remote versus, they were consistent remote versus in
Well, they weren't
person.
consistent by definition because some were remote and some were in person. That's a difference.
So you're
isn't it?
getting me to add to, so I'm sorry. Can you rephrase your question?
Wait. I'll sustain. Rephrase the question again.
Are you suggesting to this jury that a test remote is the same as a test that you're providing directly?
The results, yes. We learned a lot.
Yes, what, I'm sorry?
Yes, but during COVID, we had to learn how to test remotely.
That's
Yes.
what I'm saying. That was different. Yet despite all
That's
the,
not what he said.
I'll
This
sustain.
is testimony.
Continue on.
did you interview everybody in person?
I did not.
You interviewed some in person and some remotely.
Yes.
Do you understand there's a distinction between those two?
Yes.
Okay. So despite all those differences, isn't it true that your recommendations are identical for each and every one of the plaintiffs?
They're not identical because I think I answered this earlier, but if you weren't paying attention, they're supposed to be assessed and given individualized interventions based on their patterns of weaknesses. So the approach of monitoring and assessing them is an intervention that I stand by, but what they're going to receive is going to vary by the individuals.
Are your recommendations identical to each and every one of the plaintiffs?
No, they are not.
Asked and answered, Your
Say again?
No, they are not.
Okay, so let's go over your recommendations.
Okay.
What exhibit do we have for their 1206? Can we pull that up, please? Can we find the recommendation page?
That was like 1206.
Did we just input the charge and not the rest?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll go through my list. My recollection, looking at your report, that you gave a recommendation regarding, based upon the MMPI 3 personality inventory, that each of the 12 plaintiffs to further investigate the severity of their post-traumatic stress disorder. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you told each that the duration of these weekly individual services should be approximately 4 years. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then you did a breakout of the cost for that. Correct?
Yes.
And that was consistent across each of the 12 individuals. Correct?
Yes, I want the jury to hear the truth.
Sir.
If you go
Is it-
back,
sir.
if you go back, each person had different issues. I'm not saying they all had the same issue. I'm not sure where you're diverging.
Did you give your first recommendation? Is it
Based
not
on
identical?
different results.
Is your first recommendation the same among all four? That each of these individuals needs to have individual services for approximately 4 years?
That is what it says, yes.
And then you also gave recommendation as related to neuropsychological evaluations. Is that not true?
That is true.
Now you said the cost of those evaluations, and you laid those out to the jury. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And those were identical as well, were they not?
That is a consistent cost for them, yes.
Okay. Counsel asked you what a cookie cutter is. What is the definition of a cookie cutter to you?
You're asking an inane question. I have no idea.
Right, you answered it. What is a cookie cutter to you? It was asked to you in direct examination. You don't give cookie cutter opinions.
I don't know what you're referring to.
You weren't here when you were asked about cookie
Do you have
cutters?
a ruling on the objection before
Sustained.
counsel keeps talking?
Sustained.
I don't know what you're asking me.
You
Baking
gave
cookies? Like, is that what you're talking about?
Sir,
It's just-
This is
you gave the same,
It's been,
Uh,
it's been sustained.
You've given the same opinions as related to future care for psychological treatment and neuropsychological evaluations for all of the plaintiffs in this case, correct?
Yes.
Okay, now, isn't it true that your opinions on what is going to be needed in terms of future damages, in terms of cost of this care, isn't dependent upon you? It's dependent upon an evaluation by another professional, correct?
Correct.
So, just so I'm clear, it's your opinion, despite these numbers, those numbers may not be correct because each individual plaintiff has to go and be evaluated by a proper professional, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a neuropsychologist first, don't they?
You're asking me the question? You're looking over there.
Asking you a question.
Yes.
And it's that individual who would have to come up and establish a recommendation under what treatment they should receive, correct?
Correct.
And it's only when they have the evaluation and the recommendation would we really know what the cost would be, because at this point, we don't know what it is.
Am I, Your Honor, allowed to elaborate?
You can elaborate.
Okay. Based on the common experiences that they had with being poisoned by hydrazine in the real water, going into liver failure, and having hepatitis and also fibrosis, yes, they all went through the same experience, by and large, and it's my professional opinion, without much doubt at all, that they're going to need psychological and psychiatric care. It's very clearly borne out in the results, as well as a neuropsychological evaluation. The only thing I want to add, and I don't know if you'll acknowledge this or not, but it's not cookie cutter. I've been very specific to what each person needs. The referral for an assessment is responsible, ethical, and empathic. I'm not sure why that's lost on you. And then the other thing is the outcome, though, will vary by the evaluation, and it's not the same for everybody. I hopefully that's clear.
That's very clear. The outcome will vary based upon the evaluation as it relates to each of the plaintiffs, correct? That's
As
what
it
you
should
just said.
be, yes.
And that has not been done, has it?
I met with every patient. They filled out PTSD questionnaires, personality questionnaires, cognitive questionnaires, and there's enough concern that they warrant continued monitoring and intervention. It's more likely than not, and I'm not trying to convince you. That's my clinical opinion based on 25 plus years of experience.
That evaluation has not been done by another psychiatrist, psychologist, or neuropsychologist, correct?
Correct. That's my recommendation, yes.
Because you're going to leave it up to those psychiatrists, those health care coordinators, those professionals to come up with that treatment plan, correct?
Yes, and the caveat is that I think it's more probable than not that they will need services, but yes, I am trying to be responsible and leave it up to another professional, yes.
And some of those people may not need any help, correct?
Not likely, but yes.
And it would vary plaintiff to plaintiff based upon what these other professionals would come up with in terms of a treatment plan.
Sounds correct.
Your Honor, I move to strike this expert's opinions as speculative based upon.
Your Honor, this is inappropriate. This is inappropriate, and it should be a bench conference.
Absolutely, or out the presence of the jury. You shouldn't be doing that.
Your Honor?
Judge, can we just approach?
As far as the motion to strike is concerned, that'll be denied, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. About the PTSD findings that you had, Dr. Sands, isn't that, how many questions are on that test?
It's in my bag over there, but I would say approximately 15 to 20.
And who fills those out?
In this case, the plaintiff.
So the plaintiff subjectively fills out on a scale of 1 to 5 what their stress levels are?
I want to say 1 to 4 or 0 to 4, but yes.
So is that pretty easy to figure out in terms of whether someone feels stress about a particular situation, a circle of 4 versus a 1?
Yes. It's identify the most stressful event in your life. Everyone identified the real water experience, and then it's in the last, I want to say 30 days, how much has this been a problem for you as it relates specifically to real water? Yes.
And how did you arrive at a baseline that these folks had prior to the exposure to real water?
I did not evaluate them before they got sick with real water.
And didn't certain individuals have PTSD before? I think you testified to that, to this.
Yes, 2
incident.
individuals are veterans, yes.
And some of these people, even when they filled out the evaluation themselves, did not register at the criteria of having PTSD, correct?
I'm sorry, did you say some people filled it out and didn't meet the criteria?
Right, they
Yes,
did
correct.
not meet the
Correct.
criteria. Now, about validity concerns in the MMPI, do you have your report up there? Would you like to look at your report? Because I want to ask you some questions about the MMPI.
I feel comfortable being able to answer them.
Okay. Were there validity concerns with the MMPI for plaintiff David Richards?
So I do have a sheet. So there were 5 people, and maybe it's better if I look at it, but there are 5 people who did not have validity concerns, 5 who underreported. So that's denying or not acknowledging problems. And then 2 people, only 2, had questions about overreporting. But if you, I want me to grab the sheet, and I could do that.
8 out of 12 have validity concerns on the MMPI. Is that not correct?
The 5 who underreported does not concern me, because in a case where you're concerned about over-reporting, if someone's underreporting, that's the opposite direction. And I can also answer your question about the 2 who did over-report, if you wish.
Did you note in your report whether they over-reported or under-reported that that's a validity concern on the MMPI,
Of course,
sir?
yes.
Okay. And that was 8 out of 12, correct?
Again, underreporting is endorsing an excessive amount of positive virtues. That's not someone who's trying to pretend like they have a lot of problems. And there's 2, and I can explain the 2 if you would like, because I think the jury deserves the truth.
Really?
Yes, really.
Well, you can be rehabilitated on a re-exam. You noted in your report that 8 out of 12 of the defendants, or excuse me, plaintiffs in this case, have validity concerns on the MMPI, correct?
You're not listening to me, but yes.
Okay. And that would include Davis Richards, correct?
If you want, I'm happy to get my sheet of paper with the names.
I offered that to begin with.
I know. I didn't know how you're going to try to twist my words, so I want to get the paper.
Okay. And go fetch your...
Thank you. It's just right over there.
You can bring it to them.
That's all right.
Okay.
That's right. Thank you for allowing me to do this. Okay. So yes, I did, in answer to your question, state when there were some concerns about under or over reporting, I did discuss it, and I specifically added that it does not invalidate the results.
Okay. Did you note validity concerns on the MMPI with plaintiff David Richards?
Yes, he underreported.
And I believe you testified that a plaintiff, Mr. Oliveira, was invalid outright, correct?
Yes, not because he was excessively endorsing problematic behaviors, but just tried to get over with it and go true.
Invalid.
Right.
You had validity concerns with Vanya Diaz.
Underreporting.
That a yes?
Yes, underreporting.
Validity concerns, those are your words, correct?
Yes, and the software says that does not invalidate the interpretations.
Validity concerns is in your report, correct?
And I'm trying to get at the truth. It says the report is still valid to interpret, yes.
Okay, I'm not making up the words validity concerns. am I?
We're saying different things, yes. What you're saying is correct, and what I'm saying is correct. We're both correct.
All right, we're both correct. Adrian Bordenay's validity concerns.
Underreporting, yes.
Ginger Land Van Buren, validity concerns.
And if you're asking me because you want to learn the answer, I'm happy to explain it. She's one of the two people who overreported only in one domain of somatic complaints only. It was excessive for her age, and it says clearly if the individual has history and complex medical history, then consider this a valid MMPI, and she does have a complex history of somatic bodily problems. So it was only one area, and it says if they have a complex history of somatic problems, then it is deemed valid.
Ginger Land Van Buren had validity concerns, correct?
We're both saying true statements, yes.
Okay.
I'm trying to flesh out the truth to you, but okay.
Carolyn Strong, validity concerns.
Yes, underreporting.
Glenn Morris, validity concerns.
He is the second person who overreported only in psychopathology. It also says if the person has significant history of psychopathology, then it's deemed valid. Just to remind you, he's the individual who was in Baghdad from 2004 to 2007, tried to kill himself and has PTSD. So it is deemed valid because he has a history of psychopathology. So yes, it was deemed, it was questioned the validity.
Glenn Morris, in summary, validity concerns, correct?
Once again, we're both saying true statements, yes.
Lisa King, validity concerns, correct?
Yes, underreporting, yes.
All right, so that is the 8 out of 12. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pepperman.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Sands, can you explain to the jury what underreporting is?
It's acknowledging fewer personality problems than expected based on others your age, and endorsing a preponderance and extra amount of positive virtues, like things such as I always tell the truth, I like everyone I meet, things like that.
So is underreporting consistent with an accusation that someone is lying about something to try to gain an advantage in a lawsuit?
In my opinion, it's the exact opposite.
And you explained the two instances of overreporting. Can you just clarify what you mean with respect to Ginger Land Van Buren?
Sure. So it got, her MMPI specifically got flagged for overreporting, specifically in somatic. We talked about bodily complaints. And it says if it's high, and if the person had a history of bodily complaints, of pain, and she was essentially unresponsive in a coma, she had to go to PT to learn how to walk again, and she had a lot of, and she thought repeatedly she was going to die. So it says if somebody has a history of somatic and bodily concerns, medical history, complex medical history, then consider this valid. But if they didn't, then yes, it's excessive. So it was specific.
Is that saying that they're not over-reporting, they're just more harmed?
Yes, their answers are higher than expected, and the caveat is it's considered to be valid if they've had a complex medical history.
Their answers are higher than expected because they're more injured than expected.
Yes, and their ability to cope with it is probably less proficient.
Okay. And these validity measures are built into the test, are they not?
Correct.
And they're designed so neuropsychological experts like yourself can evaluate the reliability on the data based on how you're supposed to read these things, true?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Are these tests, how long have these tests been around?
This is the MMPI-3. It's a widely used forensic tool. It holds up well in court as valid. Estimating better part of 30 years. But there have been various iterations and new norms.
Decades of
Yes.
these tests have been used.
Yes.
Decades of neuropsychological experts interpreting them.
Correct.
To your knowledge, did Realwater bother to have an independent neuropsychological expert like yourself meet with and assess the individuals in this case?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And to your knowledge, could Realwater have done that?
Yes.
Could they have had a neuropsychological expert come in and administer the same test you did?
They could. They would want to administer different measures because you generally don't want to repeat them. But there are other, the short answer is there's other measures they could have given, yes.
Could they have had an expert like yourself come in and review the results of the test you administered?
Of course, absolutely.
And could they have reviewed the validity measures?
Yes.
And could they have made an assessment on the validity of the test that you were opining to today?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, they did not do that?
Correct.
You were asked about several differences, whether, difference between administering the test over Zoom or in person. You recall that?
Yes.
Did it make any difference to your opinion whether you assess someone over Zoom or in person?
No, we all have gotten proficient at testing remotely because we have to. It was particularly during COVID. Otherwise, it would have been, would have stopped. And used to interacting and engaging over video. And all the measures have, not all, most measures, the ones I used, have PDFs that you share the screen. And you'll show it to them, and what's the answer? Or verbally, I'll ask them questions, and they'll answer. And anything paper and pencil, I would email it to them. They fill it out, and then they take a picture of it and email it back to me so I can score it.
And did any of the differences that were brought up by counsel change any of the opinions that you offered in this case?
No, I stand by my experience, my professional experience, my personal training, the literature, and the test data as valid and in need of intervention.
And is it your opinion to a reasonable degree of neuropsychological probability that each of these 12 plaintiffs who you assessed will need and benefit from the future evaluations and services that you testified to today?
Yes, I think things that jumped off the page to me, I don't know about you guys, but was the MMPI. Actually, yeah, so just having 91%, having psychological, personality issues, that's the vast majority. Yes, and 75% having a diagnosis of PTSD, and then, roughly 50 to 60% having executive function, cognitive problems. Yes, it's more likely than not that they're going to need these interventions.
And again, to your knowledge, did Realwater retain its own neuropsychological expert who produced a report challenging any one of your opinions?
No, they did not.
Thank you, Dr. Sands.
Anything else?
Sure.
Oh. Any questions from the jury so far? No.
Am I following?
Go ahead.
We reserved the right to question you under oath, didn't we?
I'm sorry.
We reserve the right to question your opinions and challenge your opinions under oath today, the defendants.
I'm sorry. I took an oath, yes. Are you saying, I don't understand your question.
We, the defendants, took the opportunity to question your
Today,
theories
under oath.
and positions under oath in front of the jury.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
one 18-minute video. If you want to hear it.
We're just way behind, Ron, and try to get this done.
That's actually good. If there are no questions, Your Honor, from the witness step down.
Yeah, the witness can sit down.
Oh, Your Honor, do we have questions?
No, we just want to make sure the jury's okay, Your Honor. Could you just, I know it's,
I mean, that's my, we're gonna broach.
Watch your step.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you ready to go? I see some nodding. What we're gonna do, we're gonna meet at 9 o'clock on Monday. Ready to go. How's that? And we're gonna start off with the video. All right? You're admonished not to converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on any subject matter connected with the trial, or read, watch, or listen to any report or commentary on the trial of any persons connected with this case, or by any medium of information, including without limitation, newspaper, television, radio, social media. Remember that prohibition. Also, do not form or express any opinion on any subject matter connected with this trial until the cause is finally submitted to you. And try to be here on time, ready to go at 9 o'clock, because if we can, we'll get a lot done on Monday. Because I think we want to start off with a video, is that correct?
So, Your Honor, I do have one live witness that was already scheduled for Monday.
Okay.
15 minutes, so I could do him, then do the video, or
Pardon?
I can do him and do the video.
A Monday morning?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, no, whatever you want to do Monday morning, Mr. Kent, that's up to you.
right. Okay,
That's your discretion.
okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah, so they might do the live witness first, then do the video after that. But instead of coming at 9:30, we want to get that, or 9:15, we want to pick up a few minutes, because they all count. All right.
All rise for the departure of the jury.
Thank you.
We've got,
And counsel, if we want to go a little later, give me a heads up by about 2 or 3 o'clock. I can make sure we get other people.
all right.
that's fine. No, we appreciate
I was
it.
just trying to get 6 witnesses today rather than 5.
You're trying to get a record, Mr. Kent?
I'm never gonna get 9 with in this trial. No.